Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Are you still sick?
I am soldiers and yes.
It's a big joy to see you again. And I hope the Lord
Are you nervous for tomorrow?
It's this hand. It's this very hand has shaken the hand of a king. I can't quite believe it, but hey, what a way to start proceedings. I can now say I have officially met King Charles, although he was having nothing to do with any of my questioning, was he? But fair enough. He's got a lot on his mind. He doesn't seem particularly nervous, I must say, ahead of tomorrow. And it has been raining today, but the sun's out. We are basking in sunshine at the moment. It hasn't dampened the spirits, though, of a huge number of people who flocked to Buckingham Palace. And may I just say, the Mall out there, the Mall at the Mall is a very different animal today. Loads of excited crowds, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a load coming your way. I'm asking what kind of king you want Charles to be, whether or not the public now have fully accepted Camilla, and much, much more. Stay tuned. Absolutely. So I'm going to be going out and about and meeting the Mall on the Mall later on. I am going to be asking, and we've sent some reporters up around the country to ask people their views as well about what kind of king they want Charles to really be, and whether or not they've properly accepted Camilla. It's all been Charles, hasn't it? But what about Camilla as well? She's going to be queen. What do we make of all of that? And of course, I'll be reacting to those bombshell local election results. Bad night for the Tories, but who was it a better night for? Labour, the Lib Dems, dare I even say, the Greens? But all of that is coming your way after the headlines. Brought to you today by Rhiannon Jones.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 3. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both making gains. The Tories have so far lost control of 21 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, to the Lib Dems. Labour has gained 5, including East Staffordshire and Swindon. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's acknowledged some disappointing results, but denies there's been a big swing.
We're making progress in key election battlegrounds like Peterborough, Bassetlaw, Sandwell, but the message I am hearing from people tonight is that they want us to focus on their priorities and they want us to deliver for them. And that's about halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats. That's what people care about, that's what they want us to deliver, and that's what I and the government are going to work very hard to do.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, meanwhile, believes he's now on course to becoming the next Prime Minister.
We've just taken Medway for the first time since 1998. That is a very, very good night for the Labour Party. We didn't just get it over the line, we absolutely smashed it. And it's the same story elsewhere. Same story in Plymouth, in Stoke, up in Middlesbrough. And these are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election. And make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
Well, the Lib Dems have taken over, as I say, control of Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadeem Zahawi's MP. Well, party leader Sir Ed Davey says the Conservatives should be worried.
These are some of our best ever results. They give us a great foundation for the next general election. There'll be Conservative MPs across the blue wall seats, across many of these areas, who will be really, really worried now that the Liberal Democrats could beat them at the next general election.
World leaders have been arriving at Downing Street today ahead of the King's coronation tomorrow. Leading the US delegation, Joe Biden's wife, the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, was met at Downing Street by Akshata Murty, the Prime Minister's wife. Well, earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they'll swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. And on the eve of the coronation, the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales greeted lucky well-wishers on the Mall. King Charles, William and Kate made a surprise appearance to meet the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace who've been hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend. The trio shook hands and took selfies with the crowds, and there were cheers of "God Save the King." Earlier, the King and Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That followed a final rehearsal this morning at Westminster Abbey for the ceremony. And this evening, well, His Majesty and other royals will host a reception for overseas guests. And more than 400,000 people are to receive a medal in recognition of their contribution to the King's coronation. Police officers, choristers, military personnel and ambulance workers are among those who'll receive the medals. Made of nickel silver, they feature a portrait of King Charles and the Queen Consort, and on the other side, a laurel wreath and the date of the coronation. Meanwhile, people travelling on the railways this weekend will be told to mind the gap by a very special voice indeed, by none other than the King himself. Joined by the Queen Consort, they've recorded an announcement to be played at every railway and underground station across the UK all weekend and Bank Holiday Monday.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
And remember, please mind the gap.
Certainly worth travelling for while you can. Rail passengers face yet more disruption after RMT members backed further strikes over the next 6 months. Workers at 14 train operating companies have already announced plans to walk off the job next weekend. The strike will disrupt travel to the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool. The results saw over 90% of union members voting in favour of further industrial action. Transport Minister Mark Harper says he's disappointed by the decision. And the World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It represents a step towards the end of a pandemic that's killed nearly 7 million people globally. The WHO's Emergency Committee made the recommendation to declare the international public health alert over after being at the highest level of alert for more than 3 years. And an increasing number of scams are taking place through social media sites such as Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram. TSB Bank says 80% of its own cases in the 3 biggest fraud categories were thought through the Meta-owned companies. Its fraud experts are warning users to keep an eye out for random messages claiming to be from family or friends. They say customers should contact the person in question before transferring money. This is GBNews. We'll bring you more. As it happens now, though, it's back over to Patrick outside Buckingham Palace.
Welcome back to Buckingham Palace, and I am joined by the historian David Starkey. Now, David, yesterday, you did make some comments about the government and the Prime Minister and their attitudes towards the coronation. And I just want to give you a bit of a chance to clarify what you said, really. So, you did say, controversially, that he maybe wasn't fully ingrained in British culture. What do you mean by that?
It should have been said probably British political culture would have been clearer. What I was trying to emphasise was nothing to do with race, you know, the usual witch hunters who hate GBNews and hate me in particular, immediately race. I backed Kemi Badenoch in the elections for Tory party leader. I thought she would have been terrific, and I lost interest when she pulled out. Why did I lose interest in Rishi? Because Rishi is a typical international liberal. Fundamentally, what we've got to remember is, although his earlier education, he's a brilliant man and a brilliant mind. He was a star pupil at Winchester College, one of our oldest schools. He was captain of school. He went to Oxford. He read that terrible degree called PPE, which has destroyed our governing class. But then he's California. He is at Stanford in California. When he marries his wife, whom he meets at Stanford, there's a rather mysterious entry in his Wikipedia, not even Wikipedia, his own entry online, which says some years. Is it 4? Is it 5? This man is only in his 40s, early 40s, working in California, running a hedge fund. So when he came even when he became, I think was on the point of becoming Prime Minister, he had an American green card. His wife is non-dom. So we have a Prime Minister who is astonishingly intelligent, but I think sees things as an MBA. He's a little bit like President Macron in France. You know, what he campaigns about is money. He thinks in terms of spreadsheets. We know this. He governs. He says he governs in terms of spreadsheets. In other words, I would say the problem is he knows the price of everything and the value of nothing.
And I understand what you said there, but for a lot of people, they reacted by saying, well, look, he was born here, he is British, and went to school here, was educated here for his more formative years. He is now, of course, Prime Minister in this country. How can he not be interwoven in the fabric of this country? And I think for a lot of people, it did come across like it might have been a comment about his race or his ancestral history.
But I said none of that. I mean, if you then go on and talk about, say, the problem is that he is Prime Minister, and remember, as Prime Minister, he's in a very difficult position with the King. The King is getting on for twice as old as he is. When we go back to the beginning of the last reign, you had the very young, inexperienced Queen and this grand old Prime Minister, Churchill. Now you've got this complete role reversal. And the Prime Minister is supposed to be the monarch's principal advisor. There's been very, very little sign of it, I think. And this, I think, is troubling because, again, Mr. Sunak has never talked about values. What we're dealing with, and this is why GBNews exists, we're dealing with a kind of war about values in this country. What do people actually want? What do they believe in? He has never, ever addressed that. He's never shown any sign of an understanding of our history or of a concern with it. You see what I mean? All his speeches are technical. There's I'm sure, have you interviewed Matthew Goodwin?
Yes, I have,
Right, you're right. You know what he's talking about. He's talking about the fact that there's this highly technical elite Soon is a member of that highly technical elite.
I just want to clarify quickly, because I think it's important, this really, that when you said he wasn't necessarily ingrained with British values, that for you had nothing to do with his ethnicity or his ancestral history. It was more maybe to do with his politics and his international education and his worldview.
All of those things.
Right.
Because how can it, as I was saying, I was rooting for Kemi Badenoch. I've never, ever, ever said anything racist in my life, save once when I was paddy about that Black Lives Matter, claiming that slavery was a genocide, and my tongue tripped, for which I apologise prostratingly. But this was not an error. This, again, it was in badinage, so you know this. You don't have time to elaborate. And it was, I think, willfully misconstrued. Again, I think he is an astonishingly accomplished technical politician. But I don't think he's anything more. And I think this is now a fundamental issue, because you have a king who cares passionately about value. And he's not countered by a Prime Minister, I think, who can argue with him. That's problematic.
All right, David, look, thank you very much for coming on and clarifying that. Now, there are less than 24 hours to go until the coronation of King Charles. And what I want to look at today is what kind of king do the public really want him to be? Charles was heir to the throne for 70 long years. And while he was just plain old Prince Charles, it's fair to say that he was a bit of a controversial figure at times, with his comments on subjects like the environment, architecture. His mother was a hugely popular figure all over the world. But even this week, at a time of great celebration, we have heard senior figures in many Commonwealth countries say that they want to ditch the monarch as their head of state. So, the king has a tough job on his hands, keeping the royal family relevant. Look, we've been asking people in Manchester, and I think this is really important. What kind of king do you want Charles to be?
Someone who's very broad-minded, who can relate to all the different communities that make up the UK. Racially, ethnically, whatever.
I'd like him to be invisible, unobtrusive, and just not to bother anybody.
An absent one. I think what he does for the arts is really great. He puts that forward, and it's a very different sort of dialogue to what we're hearing in political spheres and stuff like that. But I think it's hard because I do. I think that's his only saving grace at the moment.
Just a normal one. pick up where his mum left off and just be nice to everyone, look out for the whole of the country.
I want him to be a king that accomplishes things.
Yeah, well, there we go. OK, so loads of you getting in touch. Sorry, you could see me just desperately trying to hear that then. But look, we've got loads more on this. I just want to ask David Starkey quickly, what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
I want him to be able to unify, and I think to do that, do you know what? He's got to be a really traditional king. The thing that draws us together isn't, multi-faith, multiculturalism. It's those fundamental things that, they're under the soil here. You talked about the building. You talked about the 1,000 years of the coronation. You talked about Westminster Abbey. Go into one of those buildings and you feel. I was here yesterday and I had the most extraordinary experience. A young lad came up and said, I want a selfie. He was an Indian boy.
Yeah.
I mean, of Indian extraction here. He said, do you know what? I think you're great because I love the Tudors. And I sort of looked slightly like. He said, they're my kings and queens.
Oh.
Because he's absorbed that tradition, and he sees it. So we had a terrific argument about whether Philip de Gregory was right about who murdered Richard III.
Wow.
But you see, this is one of the astonishing things about so many immigrants. They actually, we're constantly told about multiculturalism. So many of them identify passionately and deeply with Britain, with its history, and that's why and its values, why they're here.
David, thank you very, very much. Right, we'll be going back and forth to David Starkey throughout the course of this show. We've got much more on the coronation on the way as we gear up. We're on the eve of it, aren't we? But now let's turn to the other big story of the day. And it was a bad night for the Tories in local elections. There's no dressing that up. They've lost more than 20 councils, and there are still lots more still to be counted. Now, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says that it was a fantastic set of results for his party. The Lib Dems are pretty happy as well, it must be said. I think the Greens in some areas are. Let's speak now to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is out and about for us at the moment. He's in Middlesbrough. Darren, look, thank you very, very much. Probably worth explaining why you picked Middlesbrough and also what's gone on in the results so far.
Yeah, indeed. Well, this is a part of the country, in fact, Keir Starmer mentioned it earlier on today, that Labour really effectively need to win back, and it looks like they're on course to do that at local level. This is, of course, part of the Red Wall, if you would like. And you know what? As I say, we're expecting the results in the next hour or so. Labour will probably do that, and it follows a narrative we've seen in other parts of the country, whether that's in Bolsover, whether that's on Stoke-on-Trent, whether that is in Medway down in Kent. They've effectively done really quite well. However, the Lib Dems have also done really quite well, whether that is in some of the home counties, whether it is on Stratford-upon-Avon. They've managed to eat into some of the Conservative votes really quite impressively. And that's where we end up, Patrick, with this really interesting narrative. Be it no doubt that last night was a really difficult night for the Conservative Party. It looks like they may well have lost up to 1,000 councillors, their worst case scenario, if you like. However, was it a good enough night for Labour where they can claim that potentially they could be the next government and Keir Starmer the next Prime Minister? And on that, it's not 100% clear. According to John Curtis this afternoon, Labour now has a 9% lead over the Conservative Party based on these results. He reckons they need 10% to get in to Downing Street, though that is above the 8% that Labour has set itself. So yes, a very difficult night for the Conservative Party. There will be a lot of soul searching within the Conservatives in the weeks to come, and that could come to bite Rishi Sunak in the butt somewhat. But for Labour, yes, a good night. An outstandingly great night? No. But could it be enough to get them into Downing Street next year based on what we saw? Really, potentially. The Lib Dems, though, I think will be the happiest party. They really have made some significant inroads.
Darren, thank you very much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor in Middlesbrough, and we're going to keep you locked into Middlesbrough throughout the course of this show as more results come in and whether or not the Tories will have indeed lost 1,000 seats. But what I thought was absolutely fantastic, or councillors I should say, what I thought was absolutely fantastic actually, was this analysis by John Curtis, who said that the Labour Party might need a lead of around 10 points, so supposedly now they've got a lead of around 9 points, so they will have to wait and see. It is interesting, isn't it, that I don't think any political party, certainly not the Tories, it must be said, can claim any kind of resounding, thumping victory. And if you look at where the Liberal Democrats won a lot of votes, they'd made gains there by opposing local planning developments. And does that transcend well on the national stage? I'm not that sure it does. So hyper-localised from the Liberal Democrats there. And when you look at Labour, They took a lot of votes from the old kind of UKIP brigade, who maybe switched to Tory under Boris Johnson. I'm not convinced that the Labour Party has managed to sell people what it actually stands for at the moment. I'm not sure that's why those votes have gone there, but I can tell you why I think the Tories have lost votes, and it's not just me, it's a whole cohort of people as well. It's because they're not particularly conservative, and the damaging local election results may mean a number of things for Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister is potentially on thin ice. He is facing a backlash from supporters of who's that? Boris Johnson. And of course, we've got the very best coverage as well of the coronation coming your way. So I'm going to be talking about those two things when I come back. Is it time to replace Rishi? Will there be calls to bring back Boris? And yes, that's right, I am keeping it locked in here at Buckingham Palace as we talk about what kind of king we all want Charles to be and whether or not the public have properly accepted Camilla. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's where the excitement really is building. You might be able to hear the clip-clop of horses' hooves behind me here. The Mall is jam-packed full of people as we gear up for the coronation. It really is an electric atmosphere. King Charles went on a walkabout earlier on as well, shaking the hands of the public, commoners like me as well. I did get to ask him what he thought about whether or not he was nervous ahead of tomorrow, and he just kind of grunted at me. But hey, that's the most interaction I can expect to get from a king, so there we go. But let's get a little bit more now on the local elections, because the Tories have already lost more than 20 councils, and now Rishi Sunak is facing a backlash from the right of his party. Some of Boris Johnson's greatest allies, including Priti Patel, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nadine Dorries, they are expected to attend a conference next Saturday. And right at the top of the agenda is, get this, it's called Taking Back Control. We've heard that slogan left, right and centre, quite literally across the political spectrum, actually, haven't we? But what does that really mean? And I'm going to bring David Starkey back in here now. He's going to be joining me on and off throughout the course of this show. And David, I saw a really interesting analysis from John Longworth, who is a fantastic businessman, but also a political mind as well. And John was basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, John, if you're watching, he said, look, it's not rocket science why Rishi Sunak isn't doing too well. At the last general election, the public voted en masse for people who seemed to have confidence in Britain and wanted to get Brexit done and wanted to control immigration. They did not vote for a high tax, you could argue, quite socialist economically party that does very little about immigration and maybe cares a bit more about Britain on the global stage as opposed to right here at home. And is that where Rishi's gone wrong?
Well, I tried to explain when we were having our earlier conversation. Yep. He is exactly that kind of figure. He is an internationalist technician. He was a brilliant merchant banker, a brilliant manager of a hedge fund. He is Davos man. And of course, what Boris, although in many ways, Boris really is exactly the same. Really, but he's good at acting the opposite. What he did at that last election, he played the game of being a true Brit. He played the game, with Dominic Cummings behind him. We'll get Brexit through. Yeah. So I suppose a very large part of the Tory vote think they were sold a pop. That's the red wall. The trouble is, the Tory party is a coalition. And for the other side of the coalition, the southern, comfortable, the nice, prosperous seats round London, the great problem is, of course, many of those, too, are classic liberals. And they are offended by, they're offended, for example, by the whole treatment of, the pretense about treating immigration. They absolutely disapprove of Suella Braverman. They loathe the idea of putting immigrants into barges. They think this is rather shocking and disgusting. So he's losing to the Lib Dems. This is why, as you said, Labour haven't had the brilliant kind of thing you'd expect. In the north, yes, south, no.
The reality of the situation is, and it doesn't matter who from the Labour Party, and indeed we are hoping to get a couple of prominent members of the Labour Party actually on later on in this show, they can't tell us that every single person really vehemently understands what Labour stands for, because that's impossible given the fact that they haven't really told us. That is just a fact. Now, the Liberal Democrats under Ed Davey have been quite anonymous. I was expecting to see Ed Davey's face on the side of milk cartons, missing for quite a while. But what the Lib Dems do incredibly well, David, is they do get out. They're hyper-local. So what they do is they look at, has this Labour council or Tory council instilled a cycle lane that you didn't like, or done something in your town centre you didn't like, or is there a planning application on the golf course at the back of your house that will turn it into 400 homes? And they oppose that, and they oppose that, and they oppose that, and they get elected locally. And that is why the Tories have lost places in Swindon, Medway, Windsor, Maidenhead, Windsor and Maidenhead, same place, Tamworth as well. I could go on, of course. But that is why they've lost to the Lib Dems. I'm not sure that transcends as a general election.
I would agree completely. I mean, there's a clear signs of tactical voting. This is the equivalent of a US midterm. It feels like a midterm, that there's disenchantment with the government, but there isn't actually very much enchantment with any of the parties, which is why you get this very even balance of gains. And I think the tactical voting is the key thing. But the Lib Dems, are a kind of political poison, aren't they? They deliberately, in a Labour seat, they will do everything they can to win the Tory vote. In the Tory seat, they'll do everything they can to win the Labour vote. And the result is, why Ed Davis is silent, they have no genuine national policy. If they were honest, they would be campaigning on rejoining the EU, and they don't even dare to do that.
I'm just going to interrupt because I believe I've got Alex Story now, who is actually fronting up the Bring Back Boris campaign. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Alex, I've got to ask, do you think that any of this would have happened if Boris Johnson was still in charge? The Tories got a kicking. Not sure if we've got Alex, unfortunately. I don't seem to be able to hear him or see him, but there we go. Anyway, we can return to this over the course. Oh, he is there now. Alex, yep. I hope you heard it. Would this have happened if Boris was in charge?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all, or is it difficult?
Yes, Alex, I can hear you. Would this have happened if Boris Johnson was in charge?
Well, the question is, what happened last year? Last year, in the midst of the scandal, the Partygate scandal, the Conservative Party did better outside of London than Labour did, and so we know what the issue was. We know that the Partygate scandal was a manufactured scandal by a media that detested Boris and wanted to see him out. And that's the collusion with the media and the civil service. The results are not a surprise at all, are they? I mean, do we think that Sunak has the charisma? Nobody really knows what he stands for. He has lost his way to Downing Street. That's the only thing we can say. He hasn't won any contests in order to get to where he is today. And so the fact that we don't know what he stands for is possibly the reason why we have the results we have today.
Alex, the Conservative Party just committed one of the greatest acts of political suicide that the world has ever seen, getting rid of one of the most democratically elected prime ministers that we've ever had, then booting out Liz Truss, who would have lowered tax, frankly, and potentially gone for more growth in the economy, and installed them with somebody who is unelected and a Chancellor who, frankly, appears to have quite socialist economic policies, certainly not conservative. What have you done?
That's a really good question. The issue is where we sold a pup. I mean, I stood for the Tory party from 2001 onwards. That means the best years of my life after the Olympic Games were dedicated to the Conservative Party. But did the Conservative Party, in particular in the centre, lie to the population? It wasn't the Thatcher Party that we were asking people to vote for. It was a much more corporatist, pro-EU party that actually hid under the skin of a Churchillian and Thatcherite party, and the referendum blew that open. And actually, what we saw with Sunak is a counter-offensive against the people of Britain. That's what we're actually witnessing. We're seeing essentially the replay of a 17th century style religious counterattack against the people of Britain.
OK, Alex, look, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there, but good to have your views on Alex's story there of the Bring Back Boris campaign. The reason I'm talking about that is there does appear to be a concerted effort now from the right of the party in light of the fact that the Conservatives have, as far as we're aware, thus far, lost control of around 20 areas. So, would this have happened under Boris Johnson? Get your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Look, I've got loads more to come between now and 4 o'clock, everybody, so make sure you keep your eyes and your ears peeled for GB News. Sir Keir Starmer says that Labour have had some fantastic results in the local elections, but have they really done enough to show that they can win at the next general election? And I am looking forward to getting out and about on the Mall. Yes, I'm going to meet Patrick's people. But right now, it's over to your news headlines. And I'm going to take you to them now with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon. It's 3:30 for your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with Labour and the Lib Dems both making gains. The Tories have so far lost control of 26 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon. Labour has gained 10, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Lib Dems have gained 4. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged some disappointing results, but denies there's a big swing to Labour. On the eve of the coronation, the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales greeted well-wishers on the Mall. Earlier, King Charles and the Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That followed a final rehearsal for the ceremony this morning at Westminster Abbey. This evening, His Majesty, along with other royals, will host a reception for overseas guests. World leaders have been arriving at Downing Street ahead of the King's coronation. Leading the US delegation, Joe Biden's wife, the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, was met at Downing Street by Akshata Murty, the Prime Minister's wife. Earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they'll swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. And the World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It represents a step towards the end of a pandemic that's killed nearly 7 million people globally. The WHO's Emergency Committee made the recommendation to declare the international public health alert over. It's after being at the highest level for more than 3 years. TV online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2598 and €1.1461 euros. The price of gold is £1,592.19 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,766 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, let's get more on those local election results, shall we, everybody? Those results are still coming in, so we will bring you up to date with them as and when any more drop. But Sir Keir Starmer says that Labour have had some fantastic results. But have they actually been good enough for a party that wants to win a general election? Bear in mind, they've still got a big majority to overturn. Starmer was in Medway in Kent, where Labour won control of the council from the Tories for the first time since 1998. Labour have also won Plymouth and Stoke-on-Trent. That's Jonathan Gullis' area. That he's a regular on the channel, isn't he? Joining me now is GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you very much. Now, Sir John Curtis says that they're going to need around a 10-point lead in order to consider winning at a general election. They're on about a 9-point lead, so the jury's out on all of this. What do you put down to Labour's perceived success here?
I think a lot of it is actually anti-Tory. I think there's been a great deal of tactical voting, and people want sort of almost anybody else but the Tories. However, Labour seem to have actually made inroads into red wall territory that they absolutely need to get back for the general election. So places like Stoke-on-Trent, Blackpool, these are all great wins for Labour. Also, they've been able to pick up seats in the southwest. So Plymouth was a good result. Swindon was a good result. It's a bit difficult to actually say just because you've done this, you will win the general election. But broadly, where Keir Starmer needs to be is about 10 points ahead of the Tories to have a chance of getting an overall majority.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's quivering on the edge of that. The question will be whether or not this is the crest of Sir Keir's wave, and if Rishi can prove to be a bit competent and then obviously garner more public support, whether that wave comes crashing down and it can continue for the next, what would you say, maybe 14 months until the next election. But you mentioned those red wall seats, and I'll just come out and say it, a lot of working class areas. And we know that those people lent Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party their vote at the last election. Why do you think that more working class people have gone back to Labour there?
Because I think they feel betrayed. And what we're talking about is a lot of Brexit-supporting areas. And really the great benefits of Brexit that Boris Johnson promised haven't been delivered. So in that sense, that they have been betrayed by Boris Johnson. You've also got just simply the chaos of the last year. So there's a certain disillusionment for all politicians. But this is what Rishi Sunak has been describing as sort of the box set drama that we've just been through, and people are really angry about it. So that's Partygate, that's Liz Truss messing up the economy. Now, Rishi Sunak should have got some kind of bounce by being a new Prime Minister on the basis it should look like a new government. He hasn't, but then he hasn't done anything very much. And I think what it comes down to, when the election does come sometime a year from now, maybe 18 months, it really will come down to whether people actually feel better off than they do now. If they don't, Keir Starmer is a shoo-in for number 10.
Yeah, I think there is some truth in that, to be honest with you. Nigel, about the money in people's pockets being an absolutely core issue when they go into that polling booth and when they put their cross in whatever box it is. That will be top of their agenda, I think, won't it? But can I ask, because I'm supposed to have Tom Watson on a little bit later on, former deputy leader of the Labour Party. I'm also going to be talking to Vince Cable, actually, fingers crossed, later on. But Tom Watson, I imagine, is going to tell me that this is a resounding victory for Labour and that this is a symbol that the British public have come back to the Labour Party. I'm not sure people know what the Labour Party stands for. Do you? What were people voting for?
Well, I think I do know what the Labour Party stands for. I mean, this accusation that Keir Starmer doesn't stand for anything, I think probably did wash about a year ago. Since then, he's been fleshing out policy after policy. So we kind of do know what he stands for. Whether you actually like it or not, or believe it, is a different matter. But he does talk about what he calls his mission. So that will have to give Britain the fastest growth in the G7, to halve violent crime. He's got various ideas about taxation, ending non-dom status, for instance, the charitable status of private schools, so they will pay more tax. He puts everything onto growth, and what we need to hear from him now is exactly how he will achieve that growth. But at the moment, we certainly have plenty of ambitions from the Labour Party about how they would actually run a government and make Britain better.
And no doubt we'll talk more of those. Just one more quick one with you, Nigel, if that's OK. And that is about the Liberal Democrats. And I happen to live in the Windsor and Maidenhead borough, right? So I know that quite well. And I know that the Liberal Democrats have made a massive virtue there about blocking planning developments. Because, frankly, if people live in a rural area, they don't want 500 houses going up on the lovely golf course that used to be at the back of their house. And I can understand that. But does that kind of policy really do well on a national level?
Well, no. I mean, these are local elections we've just had, so something like that would play quite big. I mean, politics actually really does come down to local issues. So if you've got a massive pothole outside your front door, what your primary concern will be getting somebody to come and fix it, and your vote in a local election will go in that particular direction. If you've got no money in your pocket, you'll be concerned about the cost of living. So obviously it depends on what it is that actually troubles you, but certainly in local elections, if there's a major controversy going on, that's where a party that says they can solve it or stop it will benefit.
Yeah, look, Nigel, thank you. Fantastic stuff, as always. That is, of course, Nigel Nelson, the wonderful political guru and fan favourites here at GB News. Now, look, there's a great atmosphere building here at Buckingham Palace. I want to get back onto talking about the coronation latest, and the sun is just about poking through the clouds here. Long may that last. I don't fancy getting all wet, but there we go. I'm about to go and speak to some fans who are celebrating this historic event. So, in just a few minutes, I'm going to speak to those Royal superfans in the Mall on the Mall. It is a completely different beast. You're about to see it than what it was when I was there yesterday. Hundreds of people, if not thousands. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Is the People's Channel. Britain.
Welcome back to GB News, live from Buckingham Palace, where in the last couple of hours we have had the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales surprise the crowds who have lined the Mall, many of them sleeping overnight in tents, trying to get the best view of the coronation procession tomorrow. So they were thanking members of the crowd who were there. So all the celebrations are very much ramping up here ahead of the big day tomorrow. And with the King actually due to take the oath tomorrow, of course that's sacred tradition for the coronation ceremonies. He is of course become the supreme governor of the Church of England. GB News has been looking at the religious aspect of the day, and our very own Lisa Hartle, our London reporter, is in Westminster Hall, where religious leaders have just finished their walk of faith in celebration of the coronation. Lisa, what's happening where you are?
Hello, yeah, well, I'm joined by two very special guests, so two people who've just taken part in the walk, but they've got very special roles into tomorrow. So the Archbishop of Westminster, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, and Muslim interfaith leader Aliya Azam. Both of you have got amazing roles tomorrow. Just do you want to tell me a bit about it, how you're feeling?
I'm feeling really excited. I'm really looking forward to it. It's one of the first times that different faith representatives will be taking part in the coronation. Britain is one of the most diverse countries in Europe, and it's fitting that other faiths are represented.
So what exactly, because I know you were telling me you took part in some rehearsals already, what will you be doing tomorrow?
So I'm part of the Faith Leaders procession, and also I'm being selected to greet the King at the end, just before he leaves into his golden carriage. And the King has shown a deep interest throughout his life in different spiritual values. He's shown respect, and with that shared responsibility that we have for each other, that partnership of respect and responsibility is the embodiment of the King, and that should be celebrated.
Are you feeling nervous about it?
Not at all, no. I'm really looking forward to it.
Quite right.
Yes.
Quite right. Hello.
And your role tomorrow, you're going to be blessing the King.
Yes, that's right. That's when the formal anointing and the reception by the King of the different regalia, including the crown. Then there is a blessing at that point before he moves away from the coronation chair into the other chairs of state. So there are, I think, 5 of us, 5 Christian leaders, 2 from the Church of England, 1 from the Methodist Church, 1 from the Greek Orthodox Church, and 1 representing Churches Together in England, and myself. So it's a very solemn moment, and for me, it's really remarkable, of course. from a different perspective, because the Catholic Church has been here all the time. So you could say for the first 500 years, coronations were Catholic ceremonies. So this is the first time for 400 years in which a Catholic bishop has taken part. So it's a big leap in history.
Well, I wish you both all the luck tomorrow. I'll be looking out for you both on the telly. And thank you so much for your time speaking to us today. So, so the Walk of Faith is finished. Everyone here now has, many of them have got roles in tomorrow. So everyone's going to start preparing for being part of history tomorrow.
Lisa, thank you live from Westminster for us meeting the different faith leaders who are going to be taking part in tomorrow's coronation. Now, I believe we can join Patrick Christys live on the Mall outside Buckingham Palace. And I believe, Patrick, you actually shook hands with the King earlier today.
I did. It was a remarkable experience, actually. So, as you can see, I am on the Mall at the moment. And look, the world of difference. Yes, hello. The world of difference between this time yesterday and today is amazing. Look at all. And it is as far back as the eye can see. It's a non-stop train of people here who are all just really happy and excited about the coronation tomorrow. But yes, so not so long ago, what? Half ago, maybe. Sorry. It's all right. Occupational hazard, this, isn't it? King Charles's car just pulled up where those people are gathered in the middle of the road. There, you can see. And he got out of that car, much to the jubilation of everybody who was around here. He got out and he did a walkabout for about 20 minutes, half an hour, shook some hands, and I just managed to be in the right place at the right time and got to shake his hand. But what I'm going to do now is, much to the surprise of a lot of people who are just comfortably eating their prawn sandwiches and drinking some cheap fizz, I'm going to go and try and intermingle with them and see what they're saying about the excitement ahead of the day. I can see, by the way, one of a lot of American flags here. A lot of American flags. Shall I go and see what these people are all saying here? Excuse me. Hello. Hello. Can I just bother you very? All right. Well, where have you come from?
Well, I actually came with my husband from Maidstone, but my sister and brother-in-law came from Southeast Mississippi.
Fantastic. And obviously, look, I'm all over these massive American flags. There's quite a lot of American flags here. Quite a lot of American flags. Why do you guys care so passionately about I'm going to say it, our coronation? Go on, why?
You want to field that one, Tori?
Why do you care so much about the coronation?
I don't know. We've just always loved the UK and the royal family. I came over for the funeral, not something to be missed, and this is not something to be missed either. It's part of history.
Absolutely, and I can see you've got a cracking setup here. I mean, there's loads of tents. I don't know if we can get just to have a quick look at the whole setup that they've got here. I mean, it is magnificent. So, how are you guys keeping yourselves going then? Are you in these tents?
A friend of ours is in this tent, and she's been here for 2 days, a day.
Yeah.
And then we've only been here today. But yeah, so we're still doing fine, but she's tired.
Yeah, she's a little run down.
She's actually asleep in the tent at the moment. All right, well, I won't wake her up. Okay, let's just keep going and just see if there's anybody else that we might be able to have a quick chat with here. I'm going to keep us walking along and we'll battle through some of these crowds. Hello, how are you? Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So, what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
Just as he is, the man he is. I just like him. Yeah, can't wait for tomorrow, and really looking forward to from whatever he does after. He's been a brilliant man all his life. All he's done for the Prince's Trust and everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And were you lucky enough to have met him before or not when he was on his little walkabout?
I met him probably. He wouldn't ever remember 40, 50 years ago. He did shake my hand.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it, but many, many years ago.
Well, I've been lucky enough to just have that experience. There we go. And look, I've got to ask you, I hope you don't mind me asking, because it's all about King Charles, all about King Charles. There is another big individual tomorrow, and that is Camilla.
Yeah.
How are you with Camilla?
With Camilla.
Because it is a bit controversial, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think, Queen Consort, but, she's every right to be there.
Yes,
so, yeah.
And she has been an absolute rock, and I think that is something that is maybe understated, actually, isn't it? That the work that she has done behind the scenes, just probably to keep Charles on track a bit at times.
Yeah, I think the work she's done behind the scenes for many, many years. She's for all sorts of causes. It's in their blood, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow. I'm going to love you and leave you now. I'm going to keep on moving down because I've just seen a lady here with a wonderful hat on and a flag, and I'm going to just try to bother her briefly. Excuse me to interrupt very quickly. Is there any chance I can have a quick chat with you?
Yes, of
now,
course,
talk me through your outfit.
Oh, thank
Wonderful hat on.
Yeah, the King. God save the King and all that. Yeah.
So where have you come from to be here today?
Well, actually, I'm a Brit, but I've lived for 50 years in Toronto, and this is my husband who's Canadian. But I'm a true Brit.
You're a true Brit, and you are the husband?
Yes.
I'm the honorary Brit.
Yes. Does she, just between you and me, mate, does she drag you to stuff like this, or are you happy to be here?
I love coming here, especially for this, yes.
Well, we came for the Jubilee, and we camped out, so we're used to it.
Very quick. Charles to be?
I think he'll be an amazing king. He's good for the new Britain, I think. Yeah.
Now, I've got about 5 seconds before I've got to throw back, which gives me just enough time to ask, can we have a God Save the King?
God save the
King!
Rule Britannia!
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 4 p.m. and I'm Patrick Christys. Welcome to Buckingham Palace on the eve of one of the biggest events in this country's long and proud history. So, behind me is the palace itself, the most famous building in the world, and King Charles will leave from there out of those gates you can see on your screen now at around 20 past 10 tomorrow morning as he makes his way to the UK's first coronation for 70 years. And check out what I've been up to earlier on. Good luck for tomorrow.
It's not mine, it's one of the soldiers. Well, they are roughing it a little bit. So. Didn't all get too wet, I hope.
God save the King. Not too wet. Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Are you still sick? Are you still healthy? It's a great joy to see you again. And I hope the Lord would...
Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Oh, there we go. Yes, that was King Charles there. I was having a look. I wasn't picking my nose for anyone else. Yes, I can now say that I have met King Charles. Okay, there you go. This very hand now has been graced by royalty. So clearly I'm never going to wash. Anyway, Charles and other members of the royal family were at Westminster Abbey earlier on for a final rehearsal before the big day. And there was some rain earlier on. Some rain, a clap of thunder or two, but that certainly hasn't dampened the spirits of the huge number of people who have flocked to Buckingham Palace. And if you were just watching moments ago, you would have seen me on the Mall, and it really is a Mall on the Mall. Look, ladies and gentlemen, what a time to be alive, and we're going to do the absolute lot of it. What kind of king do you want Charles to be? Have the public finally accepted Camilla? We're building up to it, ladies and gents. We're nearly there now. Well, let's be a part of history together, ladies and gentlemen, right here on GB News. And yes, as I said, I am going to be asking today, what kind of king do you want Charles to be? So what stuff do you want him to prioritise? What things do you maybe hope he leaves in the past? I'm talking about the environment and politics, if that is your bag. Also, Camilla, that's just the other big news of the day tomorrow, isn't she? She will become queen. How do you feel about that? Are you on the fence? And yes, not just the royals, no, big local election results as well. Bad night for the Tories, but was it really the massive win that Labour are claiming? All of that coming your way after the headlines, brought to you by Bethany Elsie.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 4:02. On the eve of the King's coronation, King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales greeted well-wishers on the Mall. Charles III, William and Kate made a surprise appearance to meet the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace who've been hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend. The trio shook hands and took selfies with the crowds, and there were cheers of God Save the King. Earlier, the King and Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That followed a final rehearsal this morning at Westminster Abbey for the ceremony. And this evening, he and other royals will host a reception for overseas guests.
We were literally just walking back to the hotel, and then we just saw everybody cheering and came over, and then saw the King.
And I got a shake of the hand.
You got a shake of the hand?
Through the crowd, and I got a shake of the hand.
Did he shake his hand?
No, unfortunately I didn't, but anyway, it was still nice to see him. Come from Belfast to see him.
It's my birthday tomorrow, and I saw the King today.
Well, good for them. More than 400,000 people are to receive a medal in recognition of their contribution to the King's coronation. Police officers, choristers, military personnel and ambulance workers are among those who'll receive the award. Made of nickel silver, they feature a portrait of King Charles and the Queen Consort, and on the other side, a laurel wreath and the date of the coronation. Meanwhile, people travelling on the railways this weekend will be told to mind the gap by none other than the King himself. Joined by the Queen Consort, they've recorded an announcement to be played at every railway and underground station across the UK all weekend and on Bank Holiday Monday.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
And remember, please mind the gap.
World leaders have been arriving at Downing Street ahead of the King's coronation. Leading the US delegation is Joe Biden's wife. The First Lady, Jill Biden, was met at Downing Street by Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife. Earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they'll swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. Our other top story today, the Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both making gains. The Tories have so far lost 25 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadhim Zahawi is MP. Labour has gained 10, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Liberal Democrats have gained 5. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged some disappointing results, but denies there was a big swing to Labour. But the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, says the Conservatives should be worried about the next general election.
These are some of our best ever results. They give us a great foundation for the next general election. There'll be Conservative MPs across the blue wall seats, across many of these areas, who will be really, really worried now that the Liberal Democrats could beat them at the next general election.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, believes he's now on course to become the next Prime Minister.
We've just taken Medway for the first time since 1998. That is a very, very good night for the Labour Party. We didn't just get it over the line, we absolutely smashed it. And it's the same story elsewhere. Same story in Plymouth, in Stoke, up in Middlesbrough. And these are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election. And make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
In other news, rail passengers face yet more disruption after RMT members backed further strikes over the next 6 months. Workers at 14 train operating companies have already announced plans to walk off the job next weekend. The strike will disrupt travel to Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool. The results saw over 90% of union members voting in favour of further industrial action. The World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. This represents a step towards the end of a pandemic that has killed nearly 7 million people worldwide. The World Health Organization's Emergency Committee made the recommendation to declare the international public health alert over after being at the highest level of alert for more than 3 years. And an increasing number of scams are taking place through social media sites such as Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram. TSB Bank says 80% of its own cases in the 3 biggest fraud categories were through the Meta-owned companies. Its fraud experts are warning users to keep an eye out for random messages claiming to be from family or friends. They say customers should contact the person in question before transferring money. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
Right, OK. Well, the wind is picking up a bit here, I must say, at Buckingham Palace, but hopefully this all doesn't fall down around me. I'm Patrick, Christys here, as we build up on the eve of the coronation, and it's going to be a fabulous hour that I've got lined up for you. Loads to get through. Let's get stuck straight into it, shall we? Now, in the last hour or so, I've been out and about talking to people, basically seeing what they make of the whole thing. But we talked about a lot of the kind of king that the public wants. So what kind of king do you want Charles to be? But I want to now turn my attention over to Camilla. Camilla was a hugely unpopular figure for such a long period of time after Charles and Diana's marriage ended, for obvious reasons. But as time passed, she has become more and more liked. She married Charles in 2005, and now she is less than 24 hours away from swapping the Queen Consort title to that of Queen Camilla. Now, this is controversial. Are you OK with Camilla? Do you like her? Do you think that our dear late Queen wanted her to be Queen Consort and not Queen? I went over to Manchester, not me actually, we sent Sophie Reaper, to Manchester to find out what people there made of Camilla.
Have you accepted Camilla as the Queen?
Absolutely. I think she's great.
Tell me why you think she's great.
Because she's clearly very loyal, and I think she makes them happy, and...
No, I like her to be invisible as well.
Why?
Basically. No, I just don't think they've got a role to play in today's modern society, really. They're just privileged, and good luck to them, but...
Yeah, I just don't see what she offers, really. I think I haven't done enough research in it to know, but I would say no.
Yourself?
I think she's grown into the role. I think there was a lot of dissent when Diana died and a lot of antipathy towards her. But I think, yeah, she's been a good companion to me, and I think she'll be a good Queen Consort.
They're just human beings, aren't they? They fell in love. I'm sure you could look at a number of things and say that's not quite right, and it doesn't fit the monarchy and so forth. But they're human. It just humanises them even more to me, so I have no problems with it.
OK, all right. Well, look, ladies and gents, what do you think? Is Camilla your Queen? David, should Camilla be Queen?
By fact,
she's married to the king. It really is as simple as that. In a sense, I suppose you could say, we were sold a pup with the whole business of, Princess Consort, Queen Consort, your queen. But the thing is, I think you've touched on something absolutely fundamental. This coronation is an astonishing change round for the House of Windsor. The House of Windsor was founded on the idea that it represented the perfect British family and that divorce was a complete and absolute no-no. Let's cast our minds back to the wedding of the King's grandparents to George VI and the woman who becomes Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The Archbishop of York preached the sermon. He looked at them. This is, happy, happy days. You're getting married. What did he say? You cannot swear that your marriage will be happy. You can and will swear that it shall be noble. In other words, even if you hate each other's guts, you won't get divorced. And there's been this, and it's been driven through by Charles. Okay, other of the Queen's children have had their problems, but as it were, the acceptance of it has been driven by the King.
Why should the public accept Camilla? There is, understandably, a huge amount of love and loyalty to Diana. And Camilla, let's be honest with you, had a massive role to play. She was having an affair with Charles.
Yes, I think the evidence of Jonathan Dimbleby's book is clear and hasn't been sufficiently recognised. The two of them became unfaithful together after the birth of the boys. I think that is absolutely clear. So the idea that he runs straight off, and has sex with her the night after the marriage is not true. I think it's very important to say that. But yes, Camilla was hated. She was hated as Anne Boleyn was hated, because she'd broken up a royal marriage, and because particularly women identify with another woman who is the unfortunate party. I think it was very, very much a woman thing. By no means only, but there was a passion of women feeling, if she can be got rid of, I can be got rid of.
I think there's some truth to that. I do think there is some real truth to that. This is purely anecdotal, but the majority of people I talk to about Camilla, or when we get emails in about it, do tend to come from women, and the ones that are pro-Diana, that is. So, perhaps there is some truth to that. But what does she do for Charles behind the scenes? We know, in fact, Paul Burrell was on with Dan Wootton last night. Fabulous show, by the way. You can watch that back online on our YouTube, and make sure you do, or on Catch Up on TV. But he was saying that Charles has got a temper on him. And sometimes
we saw it. We saw it with the famous fountain pen. The king. He's very. You saw him in action. He's charming and whatever. But there's a passion about him, and there's also a frustration. He was a very frustrated young man. Parents who were unsympathetic, an education which he largely hated, and I think there are all these emotions contained in him. And he's also a driven man. Those extraordinary. Somebody who writes like that. Those extraordinary spider letters. He works continuously. He's no time for lunch. His day, he's a driven man. And driven people tend actually to be, you must be.
My producers will vouch for the fact that I am not always a particularly nice man.
Exactly. But you see, she's good for him. And the image of her is really true, calm down. But also I think she's got a degree of street wiseness and shrewdness, which he doesn't. She has the experience of not being royal. He has always, whatever his problems, he's been royal, he's been in that, save, the horrors of his education. When he was tormented at boarding school, viciously bullied. And it's important that we remember that. But subsequently the life of Riley, the life of Charles, but she's that toning down, that regularization, the ordinary. There's a wonderful story told of the first time that he saw Kling film and was utterly appalled. He'd never seen this terrible substance. And it had to be. It may be an urban myth, like the squeezing of the tube of toothpaste. But I think there's a measure of truth in it. Camilla knew what Kling film was.
Camilla knew what Kling film was. There you go. It's the equivalent of when you ask a politician, isn't it, how much is the price of milk or a loaf of bread? Well, there we go. David will be joining me throughout the course of this show. But there is a huge security operation here at Buckingham Palace. In fact, quite regularly you will see the police cars and motorcycles with patrols past me here. We know, don't we, that there will be 29,000 officers on duty in the lead up to the coronation and over the bank holiday weekend as well. But let's go to GB News' Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, look, a massive security operation, and actually a preemptive one as well. I was reading earlier today, actually, about how some known terrorists have already been paid visits. They've had the old knock on the door from the police, and their movements are going to be tracked on the day. So the police going to extreme lengths.
Yeah, and not just in recent days. The intelligence picture is being assessed all of the time, and they are looking, because there are thousands, sadly, of individuals in this country who hold extremist beliefs, who at some time or another may cross over into violent extremism, and this has always got to be the sort of weighing up that the security services and the police have to do. Who do they need to be concerned about? And most of the time, of course, we know they get it right, but occasionally they miss an individual, and that person can go on and cause some quite horrific harm, as we've seen in the past. But this operation, you mentioned the 29,000 police, Patrick. Yes, they're on duty throughout this coronation weekend. It'll be 11,500 on duty tomorrow itself for the coronation ceremony. That's more than was on duty for the death of the Queen, for her funeral. And they will be supplemented by thousands of members of the military who will be out there as well, not just taking part in the ceremonial procession, but they'll be lining the route. It's an extra tier of security that is on hand as well, to be able to scan the crowds, to talk to the crowds, to see that everyone is there and enjoying themselves and looking out as they do for anything untoward. But it's been really interesting, Patrick. You alluded to it there, the motorcades that have been zipping backwards and forwards. There are hundreds heads of state from countries all around the world. They all have to be managed and escorted by the police. There's a huge operation that has involved bringing these traffic motorcycles from forces right around the country to take over some of the escort duties, because the Metropolitan Police, understandably, just don't have enough resources to deal with all these motorcades, these convoys that they will have tomorrow, to have a beautiful choreographed operation here that we'll get a bird's eye view of at Westminster Abbey as they're zipping in and out of the Abbey, dropping these people off before the King and Queen arrive in that procession in the Diamond Jubilee coach. And then, of course, on the way back, it's going to be absolutely spectacular. 4,000 military personnel, 19 military bands. There will, of course, be the gold state coach leaving Westminster Abbey. 3 other coaches, though, carrying other working members of the royal family. So a spectacle that everyone can revel in. And these streets tomorrow, well, I'm going to have to get here very early in the morning, because if you're not here by about 5, 6 in the morning at the very latest, it's going to be pretty difficult to move.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you very, very much. Mark White, our Home and Security editor. And right on cue, we've just had a police motorcade go past me. So there you go. The security operation is vast. We've had a police officer in this studio as well, just rummaging around, asking if there's any suspicious packages. When King Charles went, there's the motorcade now. When King Charles went and did his walkabout earlier on, the police helicopters are in the air. And one thing that is absolutely amazing when you're here at the scene is that you just see how quickly our security forces swoop into action when there is just something big going on, and they just close areas down. David Stark is with me now. Just one quick one with you, David, on this, and it's something I read earlier on. There's a notable terrorist, Anjem Chowdhury, said that he'd had the knock on the door from the police, and he said he wasn't coming to the coronation and all of this stuff, and that won't be uncommon. But what he said was that he wasn't surprised and wouldn't be surprised if there was an increased terror threat as a result of what Prince Harry had said about killing Taliban.
I think that very likely. He boasted something which I think is not very soldierly, about killing the enemy. I suppose it's what soldiers do. For heaven's sake, you psych yourself up to this. But, you know, again, it was all part of that terrible me sense of Harry's interview, sort of casting himself as a kind of, you know, star of war. But as we know, the hatred of radical Islam for those who attack it. So he is a target.
Yeah, well, there you go. Look, David, thank you very much. And right, okay, so the weather, I was going to say the weather's not been great today, but every time I'm about to say that, the sun comes out, so I might just keep saying it. But will it rain on King Charles's parade tomorrow? We've got the best coverage of the coronation from our brilliant position right outside Buckingham Palace. I really hope the flyover isn't cancelled. It may well be if there's storms. I'm going to be keeping you up to date about what you can expect for your garden parties. If you're coming down here on the Mall, it better not rain on our parade. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Buckingham Palace, where the excitement is building. Less than 24 hours to go now until the coronation, and it's been a hub of activity. The palace that you can see there on your screens if you're watching us on TV or online, and those gates have been opening wide and shutting firmly behind them, as well as more and more cars seem to be coming in and out. And yes, we are expecting the arrival potentially of a few dignitaries very shortly. We will bring all of that to you. But the big question that everyone really wants to know, ahead of the garden party tomorrow, ahead of the gatherings tomorrow, ahead of people who are coming out here and lining the Mall and lining central London, is it going to rain? Certainly what I want to know. But there's been a lot of concern about that because, as well, there's supposed to be a flyover tomorrow. Will that be cancelled? There's even talk of thunderstorms. So what is in store for us weather-wise tomorrow, and that's really what I want to talk about now. So we're going to bring in who we got here. We've got a familiar face on GB News. Yes, it's Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Yes, Aidan. Fantastic. So, thank you. It's funny not seeing you in front of a green screen, Aidan, I must say. But what's the weather going to do for us tomorrow?
Well, the omens aren't good, Patrick. When you look at the last 4 coronations, it rained on every single one of them. In fact, Queen Elizabeth's coronation back in 1953, it was only 12 degrees, even though it was June. So the weather often isn't very nice for these events. And tomorrow, although it's not going to be as cold as it was for the last coronation, there is some rain about. Not the thunderstorms we've seen today, not for London anyway, but we will see some outbreaks of mainly light rain and drizzle throughout the morning and then into the early afternoon as well. And there'll be a lot of cloud. And you mentioned the fly past. I think the main concern for the fly past will be the cloud. It'll be quite low and quite thick.
Okay, all right. Now, I don't know if you're able to just do this off the top of your head, but is there any chance we could get a slightly national picture? Because we're here now camped outside Buckingham Palace, so, you know, I've got a pretty good handle on what the weather's like now. But up and down the country, people are having these wonderful garden parties, street parties and gatherings. So is there any way you could maybe do a little bit of a national picture for us, please?
Sure. So for England and Wales, it's cloudy tomorrow. It's going to be light rain on and off. It's moving up from the south, so northern England gets off to a dry start before rain arrives late afternoon. Now for Scotland and Northern Ireland, that's where the best weather will be tomorrow with sunny spells, but there'll be a few showers breaking out, particularly over the Highlands. I think Western Scotland will be the sunniest place in the UK and the warmest place with 19 or 20 Celsius. Sunday looks better for most of the UK. Still some showers in the east, but mostly dry in the west, with warm sunshine coming through by the afternoon. Unfortunately, for Bank Holiday Monday, there'll be further spells of rain moving in from the west.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for keeping us all up to date with this. Just fingers crossed the weather does hold, but we'll have to wait and see. Oh, and just remind me, sorry, can we bring Aidan back up? Can we get him back on, Aidan? I was just wondering about the chance of thunderstorms, because that was certainly a concern earlier on today. Aidan, yes, you're back. Thunderstorms, yes or no?
Not for London tomorrow. It's more for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the thunderstorms tomorrow.
Okay, Aidan, thank you. And lastly, Aidan, if you don't mind me asking, right? If you don't mind me asking, you came to the GB News office once, and I've rarely seen a man who is as genuinely passionate about weather as you are, okay? And this story has stayed with me, and I really want you, if it's all right, to just tell our viewers and our listeners about it. Am I right in saying you used to keep a weather diary when you were a boy?
Yeah, I am that geeky. When I was 7 years old, it snowed, and like all 7-year-olds, I loved seeing the snow outside, but I got really into it, and after that point, I wrote what the weather was doing every single day, and I've still got that diary with me now.
Oh, you are an absolute legend. Look, Aidan, thank you very much, and thank you for keeping us all up to date, and we all hope that... Oh, well, anyway, I was going to say you're wrong, but we kind of do hope he's wrong, but he's never wrong, of course. He is our stellar Met Office guru. David, I mean, look...
Can I just come in?
Yes.
You know, he's a genuine royal. The King's grandfather, great-grandfather, George V, was a passionate devotee of his rain gauge. And in the royal diary, there is a careful entry, 1/8 of an inch fell. There are obsessive people who do this. The King was also, George V, founds a great royal stamp collection. So philately and rain gauges, I think they go together.
Wow.
They're displacement for obsessives.
Oh, well, there you go, hey, David Starkey, thank you. Right, OK, I've got loads more stuff to come between now and 5 o'clock, you wonderful people, as the excitement is building. But Sir Ed Davey says that time's up for Rishi Sunak. He's the leader of the Lib Dems, in case you're wondering who on earth he is. But the Lib Dems did have a very good night at the local elections. What does all of this really mean? I'm going to be talking to a very prominent Liberal Democrat. Hopefully it's Vince Cable. I think it's just a matter of moments to see what he makes of everything. But of course, as well, I'm going to be out and about on the Mall. I'm going to meet Patrick's people. That's all after your news headlines with Bethany Elsing.
Patrick, thank you. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 4:30. On the eve of the King's coronation, King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales greeted well-wishers on the Mall. Charles III, William and Kate made a surprise appearance to meet the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace who've been hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend. Earlier, the King and Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That follows a final rehearsal this morning at Westminster Abbey. And this evening, he and other royals will host a reception for overseas guests. Well, some of those guests have been arriving at Downing Street ahead of tomorrow. Leading the US delegation is Joe Biden's wife. The First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, was met at Downing Street by Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife. Earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they will swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. The Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both making gains. The Tories have so far lost control of 29 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadeem Zahawi is MP. Labour has gained 12 councils, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Liberal Democrats have gained 6. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged some disappointing results. And the World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It represents a step forward for the end of the pandemic that's killed nearly 7 million people globally. The international public health alert has been at the highest level for more than 3 years. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Yes, well, hello, everybody. That is just one of our lovely, wonderful camera people there. He's busy working away, so just ignore him. But there we are. Let's get more on the local elections now, shall we? And it's been a shock defeat in Middlesbrough. Labour's Chris Cook has beaten Andy Preston to be elected as the new mayor. It was a narrow win, apparently, with Mr Cook beating Mr Preston by just 760 votes. So it really does go to show, though, that every single vote counts. And Andy Preston can join us now, I believe. Andy, thank you for joining us. Look, commiserations, obviously. Sorry to be interviewing you under circumstances like this. It's never nice, is it? But what went wrong?
What went wrong? I think that, local elections, they're normally about local issues, aren't they? Like a new housing estate that's controversial or a car park that's controversial. And sometimes national issues creep in. This time, national issues are everything. People are seeing the nurses on strike. They've got less money in their pocket. There's rampant inflation, all kinds of issues. And they're looking to blame somebody in charge, the government. So what we're seeing is in the red wall places where the Tories or coalitions got into power, Labour are coming back hard and fast. And in places where the Tories have been in power for a while, the Lib Dems are making real headway. So if I was Rishi Sunak, I'd be really concerned because the message is really clear and strong. We're holding your party responsible and the writing's on the wall, I think, for the general election.
Well, is there anything that you can do about it? Because if the writing is on the wall for a general election, and with respect, Andy, it has cost you a prominent position, so you must be smarting about it, and rightly so. I mean, does Rishi have to go?
You know what I think? I think, obviously, as we all know, his popularity versus Keir Starmer is good. It's less about Rishi Sunak and more about the Conservative brand, in my opinion. I think it's been damaged. I don't think it's completely irreparable. I would put their probability of winning the next general election at something like 10%, but no higher than that. So they've got a mountain to climb. As we know, popularity can ebb and flow very fast in politics. But I think they've got a mountain to climb. I don't know how they can do it. I don't think the economy is going to turn around fast enough. I don't think the strikes are going to be resolved fast enough for the Tories to get out of this. And I guess that was my message today, is that national issues are seeping into local politics. And that's why we're seeing a really big sea change overnight in Middlesbrough and across the whole country, places like Windsor and everywhere else.
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder whether the answer may be staring Rishi Sunak in the face, which is that at the last general election, a big barnstorming, thumping majority was won for an individual who, waved the flag a little bit, so he was going to get Brexit done, and said it essentially promised everyone that they were going to be a little bit wealthier. Now, Boris Johnson overtaken by events, to say the very least, and yes, overtaken by scandal. I personally, I say this with my eyes wide open, hold the media very responsible for the situation that Boris Johnson found himself in, more so than potentially the actual facts of what went on there. But Rishi Sunak has now come in after a short spell by Liz Truss, and he's got Jeremy Hunt next to him, and it's not looking very conservative. Is that a problem?
Do you know what I think people want? People want to believe that there's strong, stable leadership. There's the first thing. But they have to believe that the future's better than the past. Now, what Boris was brilliant at was selling this dream that the future's going to be golden. It almost never was, but people kept believing him. But there wasn't the strong, stable leadership. So I think Hunt and Sunak do offer that stability, that credibility, the old-fashioned values. But what they're not doing is selling an image of or an ideal of a golden future. That's what they've got to do. But that's going to be exceedingly tough when you've got nurses on strike, when you've got issues with transport, the train unions and others, when people have got less money in their pocket. I don't know how you sell that. I really don't know.
All right. And look, your prediction then is that you think Labour will win the next general election.
That's my prediction. You know what? I have to declare an interest here. I put 90 quid on them. I got slightly better than evens a few weeks ago for them to win a majority. So I've got a bit of skin in the game. Whether they will win, I don't know, but I think evens is a good price. They look set to do well. Keir Starmer's not, in my opinion, not delivering. He's not inspiring. He's not cutting it, but he's keeping quiet, and the Tories aren't managing to win people back. And so long as the nurses are on strike, they're going nowhere.
Look, I've got to ask on this. You'd bet on Labour winning the next general election whilst you were still campaigning to be the Conservative mayor of Middlesbrough.
Oh, I'm independent. First of all, no, I'm independent.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not conservative.
Sorry. Sorry. That's my fault. That's my fault.
Okay.
Apologies. It's been a whirlwind evening for me as well. No, sorry. But you'd bet on Labour.
I bet on Labour, and I must stress, I bet some time ago before I started campaigning. But no, I think it was a good price. I mean, I was betting because the price is right. So my money's on Labour. I think Sunak and the Tories have got a mountain to climb. Right now, everybody feels that next year is going to be worse than this year. Nobody feels optimistic. If they can restore optimism, they'll do well. But they need someone to come in and do that.
All right, look, thank you very, very much, Andy. Look, great to have you on, and you take care, all right, and all the best going forward. I'm sure you'll be back. You'll be back, all right, take care. So Andy Preston there, who sadly lost, well, sadly for him anyway, lost to Labour, although he bet on it, so, he's made a couple of quid apparently. Anyway, right, let's get more on the local election, shall we? And would you believe that Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey says that they are setting their sights on beating the Conservatives in the general election? Yes. Davey was in Windsor this morning after the Lib Dems won Windsor and Maidenhead from the Tories. He taunted Rishi Sunak, saying time's up for the Prime Minister. With me now is the former Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Vince Cable. Now, the Lib Dems have gained more than 150 councillors. They've taken control of Windsor and Maidenhead, Stratford-on-Avon, Dacorum in Hertfordshire as well, which is something I was tragically born without, Vince, and 3 councils in Devon. Vince, can you beat the Tories at the general election?
Well, we could certainly win quite a lot of seats off them. The idea of an outright victory at the next general election is a bit of a stretch, but, you should be optimistic. I think these results are actually particularly good. It isn't just a question of winning so many councils, so many additional councillors. I mean, there were 2 factors. One is the base that they were starting from was extremely high. 2019, I was the leader at the time. We had the best ever results we'd ever had, and those seats were being fought again. So to make gains on top of that was exceptionally good. And the other point, which hasn't really been commented on, is that we're also doing well in the Labour areas of the north. I mean, the Labour Party expected to win back Hull, which was a city that we've been running. We made gains in Newcastle. And there was a time when the Liberal Democrats ran the big northern cities, and we're making inroads there again as a all-national party, not just a blue wall party.
Vince, I've got to ask, do you lot just say no to everything? Do people not just elect the Liberal Democrats because they are the NIMBY candidates? No, we won't build on that golf course at the back of your house. No, we won't build on the fields near the back of your house. Is it not right that the Liberal Democrats in many areas just got in because they basically blocked planning permission?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I've been active in politics in Parliament for 20 years, and I and my colleagues, were willing to take tough decisions. You may remember I was a senior minister in the coalition. We had to take a lot of tough decisions, and that's reflected in local government. I happen to live in the Richmond borough, which is a kind of Lib Dem one-party state, and they make very difficult decisions, and they give priority to new housing development where they can. And that's the model that most of our councillors adopt. They're the responsible people. They run councils well when they get charge.
Vince, the Lib Dems were in coalition when austerity really started. Okay, so have they come back from that now, and do you think that it is a little bit misleading to be criticising the Conservatives for some of their austerity and some of their financial expenditure or lack of for public services? When the Lib Dems last had the chance at being really around that cabinet table, you weren't massively vocal about it.
I wouldn't criticise responsible Conservatives who would adopt a sensible approach to the budget. But, I mean, what completely shredded the Conservative Party's reputation was Liz Truss's period in power when they just engaged in fantasy world, Jeremy Corbyn of the right. And that's what really destroyed their reputation. No, I mean, Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak are probably the best they've got. I mean, I don't think they're going to win the next election, but they've probably got the best team to do it.
Vince, does anyone really know what the Liberal Democrats' plans are to sort out the NHS or get the trains running and get people in the public sector back to work? Are there any massive plans there, certainly when it comes to save for the NHS?
Well, there aren't any magic bullets, but, the kind of things that we were doing when we were in office and had responsibility, and we had very good health ministers, was a very strong emphasis on prevention rather than just pouring money into dealing with the problem when people get sick. We put a very strong emphasis on mental health, which has been allowed to drift. And decentralising decision making. I mean, trying to do everything out of Whitehall is not a good way to run the country. I mean, our councils have responsibility for social care, and I think several of them have shown a very good model about how you integrate this well with the health service.
All right, and just Vince, one last one with you, if that's okay. Do you think realistically this is curtains for Rishi Sunak now, or is this maybe more the crest of the wave for the opposition parties, and he has a chance of becoming more popular in the general election, all to play for?
Well, I agree with your previous speaker. I thought he gave a very good balanced assessment. I think the chances of them winning are about 10%. I wouldn't put it higher than that. But I think one of the significant features of this election result, which hasn't really been dwelt on, is that the lead of Labour over the Conservatives in terms of votes is about 9%. And the calculation the pollsters have made is that Labour need to have a 10% lead to have an overall majority. And these results suggest that we will get a Labour government, but it may not be a majority government. They may have to cooperate with my party and maybe others for stable government. We become a major player again.
All right. Vince, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vince. Vince Cable there, who's, of course, the former leader of the Liberal Democrats. A great atmosphere here at Buckingham Palace, and I think you might have caught a little close-up glimpse of some security operations there. I had a sniffer dog sniffing around me earlier on, but thankfully nothing found. And I want to get out and about with the fans who are celebrating an historic event, one of the most historic events in British history. I'm going to speak to the Royal Super fans. It's Patrick Christys, right here for GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All this week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News live from Buckingham Palace ahead of the King's coronation tomorrow. Now, a 90-year-old former dancer and model who was invited to Queen Elizabeth's coronation 70 years ago said she'll never forget the magnificent spectacle. Now, Mark White has been to meet Joyce Day, who said she's also very excited about King Charles's coronation and believes he will be a great king.
I didn't know how incredibly important it was. I mean, we couldn't imagine a gathering such as they were having. This is the actual invitation that I got. Very excited and really should be framed. In fact, I am now going to frame it.
Joyce Day was just 21 and training with the Royal Academy of Dance when her name was pulled out of a hat to attend Queen Elizabeth's coronation. An incredible privilege and an occasion the 90-year-old still remembers vividly.
To see the Queen and the processions and everything was very exciting. Beautiful too. And the music in the Abbey was sensational.
It was, Joyce remembers, a freezing cold day. Luckily, the excitement of the occasion overrode the chills.
Well, first of all, we had to be there between 6 and 7 in the morning. And we had to have dresses on of light material. And although it was freezing cold, we could have a light stole around our shoulders.
Joyce, who went on to have a successful career in modelling, remembers the almost comically absurd spectacle of being dropped off at the front of Westminster Abbey by her boyfriend in an old converted Morris.
And he was still then. He went back round Trafalgar Square and he got a great cheer in his car, because most of them were very grand cars. But he said it was a sort of cheer that the dustman gets when he goes around. So maybe a few whistles too.
After a long wait, the ceremony was worth it. It was, she says, nothing short of incredible.
It was very impressive. And we were high up in the Abbey. It was a magnificent view, very high up, and it was magnificent, yes. I mean, I've seen things that the French do, they do quite well, but I think we're the best at that. I'm watching with interest what happens to Charles. I think this is going to be refreshing.
As you watch the coronation on the television this time, no doubt your memory will take you back to that event back in 53.
Yes. Yes, I think it's going to be amazing for me to see it again. And I shall take it in more this time, looking on, than I really felt doing it when I was so young and so long ago. It's a big thing to organise, and I wish them well. It's going to be very exciting.
Yes, hello everybody. As you can see, I'm on the Mount. Now, look how deep the tents are. Yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that, there were just a few people here. One tent maybe. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, and look who I've gone and found, people. It's Anita. It's fan favourite of GBNews. How are you?
I'm smashing, thank you,
yes.
Patrick.
And you've been camping out. You're the biggest royal fan that I've ever met in my life, and you've got thousands and thousands of pieces of royal memorabilia, haven't you?
Yeah. Yes, I have, 13,500, but, you know.
And you're looking amazing considering that you've been here for so long. And who's this wonderful chap?
This is Lewis.
Hello,
He's
Lewis.
14.
And how are you finding it? Where do you get this jacket from?
Well, I got it for the Platinum Jubilee, and I thought I'd bring it down since it's quite fitting.
It absolutely is. Now, how are you finding it out on the Mount?
Finding it brilliant. I've had a brilliant day. The King came down before, got out of his car, got some good photos of him.
So, did either of you two get to shake the King's hand?
Well, no, because he went over that side. He clearly didn't see us, Patrick.
No.
Yeah, he mustn't have had his glasses on.
No. Is it really going to wind you up if I tell you that I shook his hand?
No, did you really?
I did.
Well done you.
That's actually, I think she actually meant that a bit harder than it was. But right, okay, so we're nearly there now. It's going to be tomorrow. Are you just well excited for this?
Oh, yeah. I've been excited since before Christmas.
Oh, bless you, bless you. And do you think you'll cry?
No, not this time. No, not this time. This is a happy occasion, isn't it?
Happy occasion. And you've got all the family behind you there as well. Give us a wave, everybody. Give us a wave, everybody. Yes, great. Now, let's go. Right, thank you very much. Take care. Now, let's come this way to this chap who's got a special royal infused game. Stay there, and I'll come to you in a second. What's this?
It's top trumps, Kings and Queens of Britain, all the latest ones as well, obviously. All the way back to Victoria, William the Conqueror, latest pack. Charles, obviously, 74. He's waited 70 years since his mum was crowned, so he's waited a long time. Then we go to William, who trumps his dad on number of children.
Yes.
Yeah. George, we've given him a military might of 1. He's just getting started. We think he's probably learned how to salute already, and I think he's going to have a lot of regimental dinners ahead.
I think that's wise.
Yeah. The Queen, Camilla, trumps her husband by 1 year.
Yeah.
But who's the top trump?
Who's the top trump?
It's the Queen. She was on the throne for 70 years, 96 top trumps.
There's no beating her. Look, thank you very much, mate. Great stuff. And we couldn't go away without seeing these two lovely ladies. How are you? What are your names? Where have you come from?
I'm Therese, I'm from Wembley.
You're from Wembley, and
I'm
you?
Beverly, Harefield, Middlesex.
Lovely.
We're sisters.
Your sisters? Wow, okay. And look at these outfits. Just, I mean, soak these in. And I particularly am enjoying the umbrellas. Hopefully you won't need them tomorrow.
Hopefully.
No.
They work for the sun as well, though.
They work for the sun as well. Now, can I ask you, what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
A great king.
A great king, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Short and sweet. What about you? How do you think he'll be?
I'm sure he will be. He's done fine as the Prince of Wales, so yeah, he looks like he's going to be. Yeah, compassionate.
Now, how do you feel, just between us, about Queen Camilla?
I love Diana,
Preferred if it was Di, yeah.
but they love each other, so
They love each other.
that's it.
You're willing to...
Always been together, haven't they?
Well, yeah.
So before Di came along, but then we wouldn't have William or Harry then, would we?
No, exactly.
But we haven't got Di now, so.
Well, ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow and a wonderful bank holiday weekend. And it's lovely to meet you and to see so many people going to so much effort. God bless you. Take care. And where's he gone? Finally, this chap here. Hello. I mean, does he need any introduction? What's your name? Where are you from?
Craig from Leicester.
Craig from Leicester. Okay, I'm Craig.
I have no idea what this is. I've just been given this in my hand.
That's a top trump from before, Craig. And why are you so passionate about this country and the coronation?
Why not, eh? Why not? I'm on FaceTime with my mum as well.
You're on FaceTime to your mum? Let's do this. Hello, what's your mum called?
Joe.
Joe, hello. Joe, you're on national television. Are you all right? I'm with your son here. He's enjoying the coronation.
Wait a minute.
Fantastic. I mean, this is live telly, eh? Who'd do it? Well, there you go. She's famous now, so there you are. You can say hello to your mum. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful day. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is, if we spin it all round, look at the crowd. God save the king. This is mad and I love it. And yeah, absolutely. There we go. The crowds are everywhere. It's all a little bit manic, isn't it? So we're going to be camped up here as everybody's getting ready for the coronation tomorrow. What a day, a momentous occasion in British history, and I couldn't think of any better way to celebrate it than by sitting up with my feet up in front of GB News tomorrow, your coronation station.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, hello everybody, it's 5 o'clock, I'm Patrick Christys, and never mind Christmas Eve, no, we are all excited for Coronation Eve, that's right, that's where we are right now. Behind me is the most famous building in the world, it's Buckingham Palace, and King Charles will be leaving there from around 10:20 tomorrow morning as he makes his way, of course, to the UK's first coronation for 70 years. And just check out who I met earlier.
Good luck for tomorrow.
It's not mine, it's one of the soldiers. Well, they are roughing it a little bit. So. Didn't all get too wet, I hope.
Not so, King. Not too wet. Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Are you still sick?
Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Well, there we go. And yes, I was out and about meeting King Charles earlier on. He shook my hand, and I clearly will never be washing it again. So there we are. I did ask him a little cheeky question as well, which Mark Longer has told me off for. He said it's not the done thing, but apparently he didn't think I was a reporter because I mix in so well with the commoners. But it was raining earlier, but that hasn't dampened the spirit of the huge, huge, huge number of people who have flocked to Buckingham Palace. Okay, so I'm going to spend the remainder of this show now talking about what kind of king we all want Charles to be. Where's he been in the past on certain issues? How's he going to react differently? What would really make him solidify it as your king properly? What do you want to see? Also, have you accepted Camilla? Lots of controversy around Camilla. She's flown under the radar a little bit this week, but it is a big day for her tomorrow as well as she becomes queen. Do you accept Camilla? Is she your queen? So we'll be talking about all of that stuff. We might squeeze in just the occasional little bit about the explosive local elections from last night. I will be flanked through this hour by Cameron Walker, our royal reporter, and Alistair Stewart as well. Fantastic royalty of his own, so that's going to be brilliant. But right now, though, it's your headlines brought to you by Bethany Elsie.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Bethany Elsie with your top stories from the GB newsroom at 5:02. On the eve of the King's coronation, King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales have greeted well-wishers on the Mall. Charles III, William and Kate made a surprise appearance to meet the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace who've been hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend. The trio shook hands and took selfies with the crowds, and there were cheers of God Save the King. Earlier, the King and Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That follows a final rehearsal this morning at Westminster Abbey for the ceremony. And this evening, he and other royals will host a reception for overseas guests.
We were literally just walking back to the hotel, and then we just saw everybody cheering and came over, and then saw the King.
And I got a shake of the hand. You got a shake of the hand?
Through the crowd, and I got a shake of the hand.
Did he shake his hand?
No, unfortunately I didn't, but anyway, it was still nice to see him. Come from Belfast to see him.
It's my birthday tomorrow, and I saw the King today.
Well, more than 400,000 people are to receive a medal in recognition of their contribution to the King's coronation. Police officers, choristers and military personnel and ambulance workers are among those who'll receive the award. Made of nickel silver, they feature a portrait of King Charles and the Queen Consort. And on the other side, a laurel wreath and the date of the coronation. Meanwhile, people travelling on the railways this weekend will be told to mind the gap by none other than the King himself. Joined by the Queen Consort, they've recorded an announcement to be played at every railway and underground station across the UK, all weekend and on Bank Holiday Monday.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
And remember, please mind the gap.
World leaders have been arriving at Downing Street ahead of the King's coronation. Leading the US delegation is Joe Biden's wife. The First Lady, Jill Biden, was met at Downing Street by Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife. Earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they'll swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. Our other top story today, the Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with Labour and the Liberal Democrats both making gains. The Tories have so far lost control of 34 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadhim Zahawi is MP. Labour has gained 14 councils, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Lib Dems have gained 7. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged some disappointing results, but denies there's been a big swing to Labour.
These are some of our best ever results. They give us a great foundation for the next general election. There'll be Conservative MPs across the blue wall seats, across many of these areas, who will be really, really worried now that the Liberal Democrats could beat them at the next general election.
That was, of course, the Liberal Democrat leader, Saed Davey. Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, believes he's now on course to become the next Prime Minister.
We've just taken Medway for the first time since 1998. That is a very, very good night for the Labour Party. We didn't just get it over the line, we absolutely smashed it. And it's the same story elsewhere. Same story in Plymouth, in Stoke, up in Middlesbrough, and these are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election. And make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
In other news, rail passengers face yet more disruption after RMT members backed further strikes over the next 6 months. Workers at 14 train operating companies have already announced plans to walk off the job next weekend. The strike will disrupt travel to the Eurovision Song Contest in Liverpool. The results saw over 90% of union members voting in favour of further industrial action. The World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It's a step towards the end of a pandemic that has killed nearly 7 million people globally. The international public health alert has been at the highest level for more than 3 years. And an increasing number of scams are taking place through social media sites such as Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram. TSB Bank says 80% of its own cases in the 3 biggest fraud categories were through Meta-owned companies. Its fraud experts are warning users to keep an eye out for random messages claiming to be from family or friends, and say customers should contact the person in question before transferring any money. You're up to date on GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
I've been here all week and the atmosphere is really building. It's got better and better every single day, but it's really cranked up today. There are huge crowds all the way along the Mall and everyone is counting down the seconds until tomorrow morning and the coronation as well. I am joined now by GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, look, I mean, the atmosphere here today is electric. It's all going off all around us, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I can see Jill Biden, the First Lady of the United States' motorcade just arriving at Buckingham Palace. I can see a lot of Secret Service vehicles going in there. You can tell it's Jill Biden's because it's actually the biggest motorcade I've seen today in London, and believe me, I've seen a fair few of them.
Yes, no, absolutely. And just talk us through what we can see there, Cameron. Then there's loads of cars, aren't there? And
yes, there are many. So what is happening this evening is a reception hosted by the King and Queen Consort inside the staterooms of Buckingham Palace. They are hosting the foreign heads of state and foreign dignitaries who have come to London specifically for the coronation. So we know around 100 heads of states have been invited to the coronation tomorrow, and 214 different countries are represented at diplomatic level. So it's quite a show for the power of soft diplomacy that the monarchy does so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Jill Biden has just arrived at Buckingham Palace, as far as we're aware, so we just about caught that, didn't we? And there's motorcades going around left, right and centre, but there are less than 24 hours to go now until the coronation, so the preparation really is ramping up. And what I want to look at today is, what kind of king do the public want? Charles, by necessity, because he spent so long waiting to be king. It's had a very long period of time to kind of show us all what he's all about and tell us all what he's all about. But that role probably is going to have to change a little bit. He has faced criticisms, hasn't he, for taking a view on things. I will say one thing, though, about the environmental stance that gets wheeled out rather a lot. The environmental issues never used to be as highly politicised as they are today. And so when he was ahead of the game, maybe, in raising environmental issues there, it was not as political as it is right now. And so I think all too often maybe people accuse him of being too political in that regard. However, he obviously does have a view. His mother was a hugely popular figure all over the world. But even this week, at a time of great celebration, we have heard senior figures in many Commonwealth countries say that they want to ditch the monarch as their head of state. So the king has a very tough job, keeping his hands of the royal family very relevant. We've been asking the people in Manchester. I'm going to whiz us up north now, near my neck of the woods, what kind of king that they want Charles to be.
Someone who's very broad-minded, who can relate to all the different communities that make up the UK, you know, racially, ethnically, whatever.
I'd like him to be invisible, unobtrusive, and just not to bother anybody.
An absent one. I think what he does for the arts is really great. You know, he puts that forward, and it's a very different sort of dialogue to what we're hearing in like political spheres and stuff like that. But I think it's hard because I do. Yeah, I think that's his only saving grace at the moment.
Just a normal one. Pick up where his mom left off. Just be nice to everyone. Look out for the whole of the country.
I want him to be a king that accomplishes things.
I'm joined now by the great Alistair Stewart, and what a privilege this really is. Alistair, thank you first and foremost. It'll be tremendous to spend the next hour here with you. But what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
I think that one aspect of his backstory that I would always celebrate, and a number of my friends are very closely involved in it, is the Prince's Trust. Whether it now becomes the King's Trust or they find a way of finessing that. But there were a couple of television programmes I caught over the last 24 hours. David Lammy for Labour on Question Time said, I will pledge my allegiance again. He's already done that as an MP and as a Privy Councillor, but he will do it again principally because of the Prince's Trust. And the editor of Vogue UK at the other end of the spectrum, an incredible young guy like Lammy, a black working class lad who made good, said he would not be where he is now, influencing what the glitterati wear, this, that and the other, had it not been for the Prince's Trust and the work that it gave him. It's about enabling and empowering young people. It's not about ethnicity or race or anything like that. It's about poverty, and about Charles as Prince of Wales, now King, saying that's something, if I'm head of state, I need to do, and I pray he will continue to do it.
Do you think he's had too much stick for his opinions on the environment or on architecture or things like that?
No, I think it was David Starkey who said the other day, Charles's real problem on those areas, and remember Carbuncle and architecture and the London skyline, and I was reminded of that this morning as I came in on the train. I think it was Starkey who said the Prince of Wales problem, and it'll be interesting to see if it continues for King Charles, is that on so many of these vital issues, he was simply ahead of the game.
He wasn't wrong. He was ahead of the game, and we, or many of us, have now caught up. And I agree with you about the politicisation of the environment.
Yes, 100%. When he was talking about these things initially, it was not as highly charged. It just simply wasn't. Just Stop Oil weren't a thing. Extinction Rebellion weren't a thing. Animal Rising weren't a thing. And they weren't annoying people around various different cities in the way that they are. So the idea that King Charles is aligned with what they're doing is simply not accurate, I think. Massive shoes to fill, Alistair. And see, look, one of the other big topics I'm going to be talking about today, before I move on to the local elections, is about Camilla. We were out and about asking people earlier on. I just went up the mall there. It's a mixed bag when it comes to Camilla. I think people are willing to accept it because it's the natural order of things, not necessarily because of who she is as a person. But she has done a lot for Charles.
A lot has been written about it, and it's been very, very interesting. And there's been an honesty that she was always his love, and his first real love. And now it's come to fruition. They married, and now tomorrow they are going to become king and queen, because, of course, he became king the moment Queen Elizabeth II died back in September. She doesn't become queen until she is anointed, and interestingly, the king's anointing with holy oils from the Mount of Olives is not going to be televised, but she is going, I understand, to turn towards the high altar so that the anointing of her as Queen Camilla will be able to be seen by people. It's quite a big deal. She takes an oath, she goes through the whole regalia, she has her own regalia, her own crown, her own sceptres, and the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is going to be a fascinating day. And just quickly, before I do move on to the local elections, you are going to be both very much a part of it here, aren't you?
Yes,
that's right.
Both of us are here outside Buckingham Palace with Nigel Farage for the coronation coverage on GB News.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very pleased that you're both here for the next hour, and hopefully if anything else kicks off behind us, Cameron can get me out of trouble as well and tell me what on earth is going on. But Sir Keir Starmer says that Labour have had some fantastic results in the local elections, but have they really done enough to show that they can win the next general election? That's what I want to know. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News, and we are Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All this week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Look, we're getting very close now to this momentous day of national celebration right here on GB News as we gear ourselves up now on the eve of the King's coronation. But there are a few other people celebrating at the moment around the country, aren't they? Not many Conservative Party candidates, it must be said, because the local election results are coming in thick and fast, and Sir Keir Starmer says that Labour have had some fantastic results. But have they been good enough for a party that wants to win a general election? So, Keir Starmer was in Medway in Kent, where Labour won control of the council from the Tories for the first time since 1998. Labour have gained control of 13 councils across the country. I'm very pleased to say that joining me now is former deputy leader of the Labour Party. It's Tom Watson, who I believe we can bring in very shortly. There he is. Tom, good stuff. Look, thank you very, very much. I mean, Labour have gained almost 400 councillors, and I believe 14 councils now, actually, including Medway, Plymouth and Stoke-on-Trent. Can you win the election?
Yeah, I think Labour can, Patrick. By the way, if I'd have known that you were outside Buckingham Palace, I'd have walked down the Mall and come and done the interview with you live, because that looks great fun out there. Yeah, I mean, from Labour's point of view, when I was the deputy leader, it's only 3.5 years ago now, the idea that they'd get this set of election results after only 3.5 years after Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, it was miraculous. And, you know, I've been around a while now. If you look at where they're making gains, they're making gains in those seats that Labour needed to win in 1997 in places like Plymouth and Medway. That's kind of, you know, the Blair years, and these are, you know, best set of results since that general election. But then you look at the sort of new battleground that Boris Johnson managed to forge. You know, you look at the Blackpools or the Staffords, you know, even the Stokes, my old patch in Sandwell. I think Labour are going to win all of those back. I think they're in really good shape there. I mean, you can never actually, you know, of course, the current crop of MPs will be getting very excited about this, and you can never extrapolate from local elections, particularly ones that are only partial in parts of the country. But I mean, I can't imagine that Keir's team will not be going to bed anything other than elated tonight.
No, clearly it's a good result for Labour. I do wonder whether or not it is the absolute tub-thumping, barnstorming result they were hoping for. The Lib Dems, I think there's a question mark as to whether or not they might be the absolute happiest of all the parties, but it is still a good result. Do you fear, though, that this could be the crest of Sir Keir's wave, and that actually he's just riding in now off the back of a tremendously chaotic period for the Conservative Party, and in those head-to-head polls, which, whatever anyone says, a general election is largely about the two people at the top of the parties. I know we don't have a presidential system, but it is largely psychologically for people about that. And Rishi Sunak just tends to do a bit better than Keir Starmer. That's a worry, isn't it?
Well, you're talking to, I mean, when I was first elected to Parliament, I went to bed the first night and had a nightmare that I'd lost the seat. So, you know, politicians are either optimistic or pessimistic. When you're looking at those actual bits of election day, there's only 3 that really matter. The first, as you say, is what voters think of the leaders of the party. And actually, they both score pretty well on that. You would imagine that Rishi Sunak would do better than the last 2 prime ministers we've had in the last 18 months. The second is economic competency. And the things that amazes me about that is just how well Labour are doing after the John McDonnell years. And actually, in that 97 victory for Tony Blair, Labour was finding it quite difficult to score well on that consistently. So Labour's actually doing better, in my view, on that score than the mid-90s. And the other one is voting intention. And obviously, they're doing very well on voting intention. So, I mean, you can always find doubt, and you're absolutely right about the Lib Dems. They've had a very good set of results in local elections, and actually, if I was the Tories, I'd probably be as worried about the Lib Dem result as I am about the Tory one. I've spent a lot of time in the southwest of England in recent months, and I think Labour and the Lib Dems between them are challenging the Tories in every single seat in the southwest. And that must be worrying them, because for Labour, of course, it's not just what the Tory vote is, it's how many seats the other parties take from the Tories as well. So they're kind of getting squeezed. And actually on the Rishi issue, I think there probably were some nerves in my party about whether him being leader would transfer into votes. And I think a lot of Conservative MPs were expecting that they would do better because of the fact that that poll shows that people prefer him as a leader to perhaps Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. But it doesn't appear to have translated into votes today. So there's a long way to go between now and the election, but there's not a lot of comfort, I think, any Conservative MP can get out of these results today.
No, you mentioned economic competency there, Tom. I can't help but wonder whether the non-dom status / windfall tax is doing a huge amount of heavy lifting for the Labour Party's economic vision for this country. At my last check, it was going to fund everything to do with our NHS, everything to do with our education system, everything to do with our energy. It doesn't quite add up, does it, Tom?
Actually, I think when Labour get to the election, you get a fully costed programme. I think Rachel Reeves has the potential to be our greatest ever Chancellor of the Exchequer. And remember, I used to work for Gordon Brown, and he was a pretty heavy character in that regard. So I am very, very confident. In fact, I'm absolutely confident that Labour will have a costed programme for the election. And I think people trust Rachel Reeves as well. And of course, that's a little bit difficult for the Tories because of the way they crashed the economy with the Kwarteng days in office. But you're right, it will be a battleground. I think the economy will be the battleground. In the limited amount of campaigning I do as a former MP now, I did go back to my old patch, and every single voter I spoke to was feeling the squeeze on the cost of living. And in a funny sort of way, it reminds me of growing up in the 70s when, if you remember, you had Harold Wilson and Margaret Thatcher arguing over the cost of butter and the cost of milk and, what it costs to put a family meal on the table. This is going to be a bread and butter election. And actually how we can show people that we're going to sort of lighten their load a little because people are really suffering. I think that will have a big impact on the election. And in that sense, there's still a lot more to play for, isn't there? And I think both Labour and the Tories know that, and that's where they'll be going in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is very much all to play for. Absolutely undeniable. Tories got a kicking. Labour did well. The Lib Dems did well. I think it is quite finely poised. But Tom, I hope to speak to you very often between now and the general election. We can have a few more back and forths. Great to have you on the channel. Great to have you on the show. I'll speak to you soon. And next time we have to do it in person. Tom Watson there, former deputy leader of the Labour Party. Moving on now. All right, we're going blue now, which unfortunately not too many areas did last night. Former Conservative councillor Claire Pearsall joins me now. Now, Claire, it is with commiserations because obviously that word there, former, unfortunately. So sorry about all of this. But the Tories have lost control of 38 councils. They've lost more than 700 councillors, and they lost those blue wall councils, including Windsor and Maidenhead and Stratford upon Avon. And Claire, unfortunately, you were one of the unlucky ones, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I'm fresh back from my own county in Sevenoaks where the result didn't go my way. And that's very sad after 8 years serving the community. But democracy is what it is. And I think you have to look long and hard at the reasons why. you start with yourself, and I'm always the hardest on myself before anybody else. So I need to look at that. I think the national picture plays into it, and I think that people are just fed up with politics and politicians. The turnout was 35%, which is relatively good for a local election, but still not enough to suggest that people are involved and interested in politics. So I think that needs to change. I'm not sure that we can use this as a predictor for the next general election. And I think Tom Watson, your previous guest, was quite right. You must never extrapolate a set of results for something that could be 18 months away still.
No, exactly. And you mentioned the turnout there. Like you've said, a lot of people might have balked. God, it's only 35%. It's quite good for a local election, that. But that is why I especially am very cautious about the results that we've seen last night and into today translating into a general election result in around 14 months' time. But I've got to ask you, I mean, I have the pleasure of knowing you a little bit and interviewing you rather a lot. And I don't think there could be any question that you were undeniably a very, very good councillor, very dedicated and incredibly hard-working. And if you'll excuse me, that implies that this isn't your fault, OK? So what is to blame, and are you a bit miffed about it?
Well, I think you're always miffed to lose. It's never nice to be rejected roundly by the public, which is what's happened. And I think you always have to look at what you do. Did I do enough for my community? Now, I would like to think I did. There will always be those that disagree. But I think largely the message I was given on the doorstep was the Tory party are out of touch. They have had more prime ministers than I've had hot dinners. The cost of everything is going up. There are potholes in the road that aren't fixed. It was as simple as that. So it's a mixture of both local issues, of national issues, and I think just a real hatred at the moment of politics and the way politicians are acting out in public. And I think that puts a lot of people off. I do think a lot of people stayed home because they thought, what's the point? And that's really sad. I don't want apathy to take over. I'd rather have a little bit of a debate with somebody than them just say, I'm not bothered.
No, absolutely. And are you one of those ones now, it doesn't sound like it, who is going to be calling for a change at the top? We're hearing about some rumblings amongst the right of the party who are saying that, you know, we should never have ditched Boris Johnson. I mean, is there a case to say that this wouldn't happen if Boris was in power?
Oh, I think you can have that argument till the end of time, and there will always be those people that will say that Boris Johnson is the saviour, he needs to come back and come in and take over and look after us all. And there are those that say it's too late. So you're never going to get consensus on that. I think changing leader right now would be absolute suicide for the party and for the country. I don't think we need that instability anymore. But it's always very easy to look back with rose-tinted glasses. Who would have been good? Who wouldn't have been good? I think what we have to do is see going forward how we as a Conservative Party place our message out there better so that people have confidence in us. Because at the moment, I think we're teetering on that point of they don't necessarily like Labour more, they're just not very happy with us. And that's a really dangerous place to be.
There was a tweet that went out by John Longworth, which is well worth anyone checking out, which I do think, to be honest with you, Claire, hits the nail on the head a little bit, which is that there was a massive majority won at the last general election based around a few things, obviously, some of them questionably true. But when you look at it now, there's been the ousting of one leader who was very popular, the ousting of another leader, and then the implementation of someone without a vote, and a chancellor who has introduced, not particularly by any stretch, conservative economics. And I just wonder whether or not a lot of Conservatives just felt like they didn't have anything to vote for, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right. It isn't the Conservative policy at the moment that I support, for example. I'm quite a traditional Conservative, and those things haven't been met. And speaking to now some of my former colleagues at Sevenoaks Council feel the same way. They felt they weren't listened to. They felt that their Conservative values were not being taken forward by the party. So I think this is a really important time, and Rishi Sunak needs to really work out quickly how best to bring back a very, very divided party.
Claire, thank you very much, and good luck to you as well going forward. Claire Pistol there, who sadly lost her seat last night. Look, I've got loads more on the way between now and 6 o'clock as we hurtle towards the final throes of the eve of the coronation. I'm going to go out and about on the Mall, but first it's time for your news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 5:33. On the eve of the King's coronation, King Charles, the Prince and Princess of Wales, greeted well-wishers on the Mall. Charles III, William and Kate made a surprise appearance to meet the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace, who've all been hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend. Earlier, the King and Queen Consort hosted a lunch for leaders of countries where he's head of state. That follows a final rehearsal this morning at Westminster Abbey. And this evening, he and other royals will host a reception for overseas guests. While some of those guests have been arriving at Downing Street ahead of tomorrow, leading the US delegation is Joe Biden's wife. The First Lady, Jill Biden, was met by Akshata Murthy, the Prime Minister's wife. And earlier, Rishi Sunak welcomed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and New Zealand's Chris Hipkins. Both are vocal Republicans, but have said they will swear allegiance to the King tomorrow. The Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in local elections in England, with around 3/4 of votes counted. The Tories have so far lost control of 38 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadhim Zahawi is MP. Labour has gained 17, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Lib Dems have gained 7. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has admitted some of the results are disappointing. And the World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It's a step towards the end of a pandemic that's killed nearly 7 million people globally. The international public health alert has been at the highest level for more than 3 years. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Back to Patrick in a second, but first, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2645 and €1.1470 euros. The price of gold is £1,593.10 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's closed the day at 7,778 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Welcome back to Buckingham Palace, which thankfully is still basking and bathing in sunshine. I was worried about thunderstorms earlier on, but it's been a great week. To be honest with you, it's been one of the best weeks of my life, actually. I've thoroughly loved it here, and I think that has probably come across. But my favourite bit has been getting out and about on the Mall to speak to the royal superfans. And here's a little taste of some of the best bits that I've been getting up to.
Patrick, it's time for your show. Get up.
What time is it?
I don't know.
Oh, flipping heck, I've got to get going. All right, OK, I'll see you at the studio. Well, I'm going to pan round now to an absolute GB News fan favourite. Here she is. Lita, how are you?
I'm smashing, Patrick. Hey, it's great to meet you in the flesh.
Absolutely. Now, people, eagle-eyed viewers and listeners will know you because we've interviewed you several times. And normally it's at your home.
Yeah, it is.
With how many thousands of pieces of memorabilia?
13,500 now. So.
13,500. And why are you so passionate about being here today, camping out and everything?
It's because I'm a monarchist, and for the whole of my life I pledged my allegiance to the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, and now this is a physical, visual display of my allegiance passing to the new King.
Is there any chance I might be able to pinch your crown? Thank you very much. Here we go. OK, well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having as much fun as I am out here on the Mall. Now, Arthur, there's a reason why you and I don't get on about one thing, isn't that right? And I believe that we disagree massively on football. Who do you support?
Liverpool FC.
Liverpool FC. Well, I'm a Manchester United fan, so do you hate me now?
Don't know, not as much, but a bit.
I don't know, but I've got a little feeling that your mum might be quite happy if you married Prince Louis. How would you feel about that?
That would be pressure as well, but I wouldn't. It would be harder with George, though.
It would be harder with George? Really? Why is that?
Because if George got crowned one day, I'd be queen.
Oh, you wouldn't want that?
No, it would be too much.
It would be far too much, would it? And would you like to be a prince one day, do you think?
No, I wouldn't, definitely.
Why not?
Oh, it's just too much fame and too much. Play for Liverpool.
You'd rather play for Liverpool, would you?
Probably, yeah.
And I see, though, that you've got a near enough life-size cardboard cutout here. I think, where on earth did you get this from?
Well, I purchased it.
Yes, I hope so. You know we didn't nick it. Go on, whereabouts from?
Well, you'd be surprised.
I have a chair. I do not have a tent, so I'll be sleeping in my chair.
No.
Yes, I have lots of layers of clothing. I have a sleeping bag. I'll be nice and warm and hopefully dry.
All right. What's your name?
Mel.
Mel, right, OK, so I'm going to wrap it up now. Can I just ask, can somebody, for the love of God, get Mel a tent? Good luck for tomorrow.
It's not mine, it's one of the soldiers.
Oh, they're used to it.
Well, they are roughing it a little bit. So.
Didn't all get too wet, I hope.
Not okay.
Not too wet.
Are you nervous for tomorrow?
Are you still sick? Are you still It's a great joy to see you again. And I hope that nobody...
Are you nervous for tomorrow?
It's a bit late to hear, is it?
OK, all right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Patrick Christys here still at Buckingham Palace. It's been a wonderful week, as you can see there, some of the highlights. And there's going to be a few more, because I'm going to go back out on the Mall in a second. But, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at Michelle Dewberry. I mean, absolutely
I'm getting
brilliant.
into it today, everybody.
You really
yes,
are.
I am. I'm the only person that's been here all week, and then when the coronation actually happens, I'm going back up north, so I'm going to miss the entire thing. So I thought, right, well, this is my last chance to get into the party spirit. But anyway, touch me.
Oh.
Please, I've seen the video.
There
is
you
this
go.
Is this the hand?
This is the royal hand.
This is the one?
Gosh.
Whoa.
Well, I tell you
the
what.
The privilege and the power, I can feel it. It's seeping through.
I mean,
seeping.
it is. I mean, technically, you've just kind of touched
I've
the king.
rubbed it all off. All
yeah,
right,
you've touched the king there,
I've rubbed
really.
all the goodness off. Give me some more.
Yeah,
give me
there
some
you
more.
go. All right, this is taking us a real turn, but I love it. Now, what kind of king do you want Charles to be?
Just a good one, really.
Yeah.
What does that mean, though? It means different things to different people, doesn't it? I want him to be seen and not necessarily heard. To do all of the pomp and all of the pageantry and all of the tradition without necessarily interfering too much in the politics of the country. That's what I would like.
OK, now, where are you on Camilla?
I don't mind, you know. I'm not one of those people. I look at the inbox and stuff and I see people say, like, I will never accept Camilla. And I'm not really like that. I just kind of think... you know, life moves on, doesn't it? It moves on and we move onwards and upwards.
There's a lot of loyalty to Diana, and it is very much a mixed bag about all of that, because Camilla, I think, has flown under the radar a little bit in all of this. It's all been about Charles and, you know, it's his coronation, but she will become queen tomorrow, and that is momentous.
Well, someone emailed in yesterday and they asked the question, they said, next time someone sees David Sarking, and they asked the question, what would happen if the king very sadly passed away? What would happen to the role of Camilla? And then there was this whole kind of debate online about what people would want to happen to Camilla, and would she just remain our queen? And it was all getting very confusing, so it was, but it really divided opinion in terms of the love for Camilla and the sense, like you said, the loyalty to Diana.
I think what we don't see is a lot of what she does behind the scenes. Charles has got a bit of a temper on him.
Has he?
Yeah, Paul Burrell told Dan Wootton last night.
Oh,
He said Charles got a temper on him.
But then people give that example of him when he was signing his thing, and he got a bit annoyed because his pen wasn't working. Well, I ain't being funny, but if that's your moment of glory, your moment that you've been practicing, rehearsing for, you've got to sign something, you're not going to be happy with the numpty that's giving you a... Yeah, but you're not going to be happy with the numpty that's giving you a duff pen.
No.
Everyone would be like that.
No, they'd have been sacked from one of your businesses, wouldn't they?
They definitely would. I've just caught a glimpse of myself in the monitor there, and I can't quite work out if I look like a circus clown. I've got my little 2-year-old's, what's this, a bow tie on. I borrowed it from his tea party yesterday.
Oh, wow. No, it's lovely. And I mean, how are you actually going to be consuming the coronation?
I'm going to be on a train up to Hull. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying to you. I'm missing the entire thing.
Woman of the people.
Yeah, I'm going to be on a train up to Hull, trying to maintain some sense of calm with my 2-year-old so that he's not running carnage up and down a train.
Well, what was absolutely wonderful yesterday was I completely lucked out. I was on the Mall, I was on the other side of it. So initially I thought I was trapped because they shut it all off and the helicopter was coming up and then the police come down. I don't think that looks like one of those royal cars. And then Charles is in the back of it, and he just gets out and he just walks straight up to the crowd. There's God Save the King being chanted, there's all of that. And then I thought, well, I'll just chant my arm quite literally, and I have now shaken the King's hand.
Well, I know, but as we've just discussed, I've rubbed all the goodness off.
You have rubbed all
so
the
it's all
goodness
transferred to me.
There we go. Well, what
anointing going on?
There's a bit of Master Stewart there. Bit of Master Stewart.
He's staying up for the banter. Can't get rid of him. Look,
He's staying up for the banter.
Nice to see Alistair again, by the way, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes, 100%. You are royalty yourself. What have you got coming up in your show?
Oh yeah, well, I've got my Friday favourites, Paul Embry and Alex Dean. We always like those guys. I want to talk about whether or not the police should be allowed to have beards. I want to share everyone's coronation pictures that they've been sharing with me as the week has gone on. I also want to talk about whether or not prisoners should be allowed to work, and if they should they be paid what, the national minimum wage, a little bit more, a little bit less? Should they have full workers' rights or what? So I've got lots of stuff coming up tonight.
Oh, it's a series of fantastic topics, and I only wish I could have done them myself. There we go, Michelle Dewberry will be with you for the next hour, but I have just about got time now to leg it over to the Mall for one final hit from the Mall on the Mall with me, Patrick Christys, to meet, of course, Patrick's people. I'll see you in a tick.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Is watching.
Well, hello. This is why they call it the Mall on the Mall. I've never seen it like this. As the excitement builds and the crowds gather. So what we're seeing here now is hundreds, if not thousands of people coming through, getting ready to come and either camp out tonight or just take a quick picture of Buckingham Palace before the coronation event tomorrow. And there are just so many people around. I'm going to try and fight my way through this crowd a bit now and get to the tents. Now, do you remember on the days before that I was doing it, on Monday, there was just 1 or 2 tents, weren't there? All the way down there. Well, now, let me tell you what, they're 3, 4, sometimes 5 deep. And if you think this is busy here, this goes on all the way down. Can we get a shot of it? All the way down. The cameraman might have to just jump. I won't make him though, don't worry, the camera's too heavy. Look at this sea of people and so many smiling, happy faces here ready for the coronation. Let me try and get involved here on some poor, unsuspecting individuals. Now, I know the sun's been out a lot today and I know the drink has been flowing, so we might be about to find anything, but I'm going to cut across you here, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind. Sorry. Hello. Can I say a quick hello to any of you? Yes, okay. Well, hello. Can we get involved here? Now, what's your name? Carol, and have you been camping out here for long?
No, we've just arrived today.
You've just finding it?
Lovely, actually. It's nice sunshine. We've got lots of wine and picnic, as you can see.
I mean, honestly, I know where I'm coming as soon as this show ends, but you look like a lovely, smiley lady. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And are you just well excited for tomorrow?
I am so excited. I've had this on my bucket list for many, many years, have never been up here, live in Surrey, and just decided this was the time to come up.
And this is it.
Oh, this is it. So excited.
So, were you here for the King's little walkabout earlier?
Yes. Amazing. And we saw Will and Kate as well. Amazing.
Did you get to say anything to him? Did you get to shout him?
No, it was a bit further down.
Yeah, he was just a little...
Is it going to annoy you if I tell you that I got to shake his hand?
Did you?
What is that?
How annoyed? Are you annoyed?
Yeah, really annoyed. Yeah.
You can touch royalty if you want. There you go. You see, there you go. Right, I'm going to work my way on through. Are you all right to come on through? Good lad. Thank you very much. Now, I won't ruin your wine. Goodness gracious. I'll try not to film inside your tents, ladies. I'm sorry. I'll get out of your way in a minute. Can I say a quick hello to some of you people? Yes? Hello, how are you? What's your name? Where have you come from?
My name's Michelle and I come from Northamptonshire.
Oh, and have you been down today as well? Did you just come today or yesterday?
We're very lucky. We've just arrived and these people saved up our places.
Hang on a minute. That's cheating. Some people have been here days and you saved them a place.
We slept in those bags all night, so yeah.
What's it like? Can we see the orange bags down there? What's it like in one of those?
It was amazing, actually. Really cosy.
Cozy.
Yeah.
Would you recommend? Because I mean, you've probably now managed to find yourself one of the most expensive postcodes in the world, and just pitch up in it, which is good. With
no roof.
Not paying any taxes.
You're not paying any taxes? No, too right. We already pay enough of those, don't we? Right, I'm going to, if it's all right with you, I'm going to work my way back through here. It's only fitting, I think, that we finish it off with a lady who started all of our fan coverage. Thank you very much, everybody, by the way. Well done. Now, I don't know how we're going to do this. I'm going to try and work my way through. We've got Anita and her family over here. Well done, cameraman. I hope there's no one asleep in these tents because, goodness gracious me, they're not asleep now. Now, here we go. We're coming back. Anita, hello. So, Anita is one of the biggest collectors of royal memorabilia in the country, probably the world as well. And she's been camping out here for ages. And you've brought both your daughters with you, Anita.
2 daughters, 3 granddaughters.
2 daughters and 3 granddaughters. Just remind us what your name is.
Ruth.
And how are you finding it, Ruth?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'm loving it.
And, is it not a struggle with all the kids?
They're having a great time. It was them who wanted to come, so they brought me. I'm chaperone, basically.
And I don't think we've met, have we?
Nice to meet you.
So this is Anita's other daughter. How are you? What's your name?
Gemma, nice to meet you.
Gemma. Now,
I've just arrived from work, straight from work, and this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. Almost as nuts as she is, I don't know.
She brought the gin.
She brought the gin. Good. I tell you what, I'm definitely staying here afterwards. This is the best spot. Now, I'm going to ask, what's your name? Oh, it's a bit shy, maybe. Silvana. Now that's a lovely name. Okay, that's a really nice name. And Anita, when it's all over, are you just going to feel like like a crushing sense of what's next?
I'm going to lie down in a darkened room. That's what I'm going to do. But yeah, what is next? I mean, you know, a journalist said to us the other day that I'm a bit like Michael Bublé at Christmas. They roll us out at a royal event. And I'm thinking... That's true. And I'm thinking that this is going to be the last big royal event for a long time. So I'm going to party, enjoy it, and just love every minute of it. That's what I'm going to do.
Just have a great time. I love your little Union Jack headpiece there that we've got. It's amazing. I'm going to bring you back in again. I think this jacket needs another outing. And what was your name?
Lewis.
And you've got here, what have you got on your badges? You've got God Save the King. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. And what are you hoping for? What would you say to Charles? Because I met him earlier briefly and I asked him, are you a little bit nervous about tomorrow? And he said, not really, in a sense. What would your message to him be leading up to tomorrow? Because he must be a bit shaky.
Just do what he normally does. Just go for it and just do his best. I think he'll do fine.
You think you've got high hopes for him, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
And he's got William and Kate behind him as well, which will be nice, and of course Camilla. So you're hoping to see maybe the full set of them tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah. And I take it you're, dare I ask, are you a fan of Prince Harry or not?
No.
No, we'll leave it that. That was frosty, wasn't it? Why not? Why not? Why not?
It's hard to explain, but I just think it was. I don't know. I think it was a bit selfish, as per se. Not entirely, but just the way that he went out of the royal family. If he did it a different way, maybe I would accept him, but I think the way that he's gone about it with his memoir and his Netflix documentary is the wrong way.
And you've got all your family around you here today, haven't you? And I imagine you guys are all incredibly close by the looks of things, and presumably would never have wanted to behave towards them like he did as well. But I'm going to move it along, guys. Look, thank you very much. I mean, they are fantastic. Now, this is where my cameraman's going to have... God save the king. This is... I will. This is where my cameraman's going to have to be expert, really. I'm going to walk past him here. I just want to get us one final shot of the crowds all around here and everybody gathering and celebrating. So tomorrow will be the big day, and GB News, of course, is the place to catch it all. We're going to be live throughout the course of the proceedings, and it has really been a momentous time in Britain's national history. This mall here, where you can see all the flags are fluttering. Earlier on, King Charles was down here. There's going to be, I imagine, another few rows of tents and people all celebrating and, I dare say, drinking into the evening as well. Just from a personal perspective, because I'm about to sign off now, I just want to say thank you very, very much to everyone who's been tuning in and watching and coming and saying hello on the mall as well. It has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to get to see so many of you for this wonderful, happy occasion. It really, really is. And Anita and family, I've got about 30 seconds, I think, until I've got to sign off. Would you mind signing us off with a rendition of the national anthem?
Yeah, why not?
Go on, let's get loads of people in it. Go on, so you start it. Go on, Anita, start us off. Come on, come on.
God save the king, send victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different.